Welcome to the Mind Your Movies podcast, everyone. This episode, as a quick heads up, we will talk about a movie called Perfect Blue from 1997, which includes a sexual assault scene. So we will have a discussion on that scene. If you want to skip ahead of that, please join us for our discussion on Saltburn, which starts around an hour and 10 minutes, and we'll see you then.
I was a lesbian for a while, you know, but it was all a bit too wet for me in the end. Men are so lovely and dry. Welcome to the Mind Your Movies podcast.
We are also lovely and dry.
Yes, thank God. This is episode 6 on psychological thrillers. The episode is called Perfect Burn. This is a nasty episode. Perfect Burn.
Perfect, yeah.
We watched Saltburn. Nasty, disgusting, but funny movie.
Yeah, very funny.
But
lots of dong.
Yeah. Yeah, shocking amount of dong at the end. The movie has a normal amount of dong all the way through, and then at the end it just hits you with a lot of dong.
But we'll get to that.
So, this episode is episode 6. We're doing psychological thrillers. We'll be talking Perfect Blue, the 1997 Satoshi Kon movie, and Saltburn from last year. So, yeah, I mean, do we want to, before we get into the main topic, is there anything you've watched recently that you wanted to recommend to the audience?
Yes. Over these past couple weeks, I watched Haxan, the 1922 silent, witch kind of pseudo-documentary thing by Benjamin Christensen. I bought the limited edition from Radiance, and it comes with all sorts of cool features, but I watched the full cut, which was awesome, the original cut, and it's just great. It's a nice, blending of, he uses these cool, kind of vignette things to, tell the story of the witchcraft through the ages as he's talking about it as, a documentary. Or, not talking, but, it's a silent movie.
Oh, okay.
But, and it's fantastic, and very dark, and very, very interesting.
Nice. I haven't seen that one, but actually I watched a silent film this week also, The Passion of Joan of Arc, Theodore Dreyer.
Sorry.
Great movie.
Yes.
Great.
No, I've been wanting to watch it.
Great movie. I'd never seen it before, and, it's a silent movie. It's a classic, but, thinking of going into watching it, it doesn't necessarily seem like the... I don't know. It's not something you just put on randomly, I guess. So you put on absent-mindedly. So I just have been putting it off. But I finally watched it, and it's really fantastic. Especially the ending. The ending is pretty amazing filmmaking of the actual burning and the stuff that goes on afterwards and all that.
Nice.
But I totally understand why it's an all-time classic and it's definitely one of the greatest silent films I've ever seen.
And from the similar era, what is that? 28.
Yeah.
There's a shot in Haxan, actually, where they're torturing a witch, and you get this nice close-up on the witch face, and she's she has this really tortured look, and she's almost crying, or maybe even crying, I forget. And what I was reading is that actually helped inspire some of the close-up imagery of Joan of Arc in that movie.
That makes sense. Yeah, The Passion of Joan of Arc is almost all shot in close-ups, pretty much.
Okay.
It's very much, it's also at the beginning, they show you the manuscript. Literally, they bring it out on the film and they say, this is the original manuscript of the trial. So we have the records and this is what the movie's based on.
Interesting.
So it's apparently pretty historically accurate. But it's really interesting. It's interesting that it's a religious movie in a way, but it's very critical of the church and because ultimately Joan of Arc is a huge believer. She completely believes in Jesus. Jesus is speaking, or God is speaking to her, but the church sees her as a heretic.
Right.
And also there is definitely a transgender reading on the movie. Obviously it was 1928. They didn't have that type of terminology or anything, but they talk about her wearing men's clothes, and that's an important, factor in why she's being persecuted. They want her to change into women's clothes, and she's no, I won't, basically. So there's definitely an interpretation of her being transgender or something like that. That's just anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm sure people could write a whole graduate thesis on that or something.
People might have.
Probably someone did.
Haxan has a similarly kind of like modern angle to it where it tells this story of the witchcraft, but it's a very feminist movie because it's talking about the persecution of the witches, and then at the end, it tells in these 7 stories. And at the end, the last story is about trying to explain what people misinterpreted as witchcraft, right?
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things that Benjamin Christensen brings up is the idea of hysteria, which was, of course, like actually a medical diagnosis in 1920 for women, but not for anyone else. And he actually...
I don't blame him. Just kidding.
And he brings up the fact that hysteria in the 1920s, in his today, right, was really just a stand-in for the same thing that was happening during the witch prosecutions, right? It's just, just prosecuting women needlessly for like certain things that we still didn't care to try to understand or anything, right?
It's for like acting out of line sort of a thing.
Yeah. And so it was at the end when he got into the hysteria, I was like, oh, this might get dated. And then he's like, but this is really just the same thing as witchcraft, like what we were, like how we were prosecuting then.
Wow.
And so it was really, really kind of a modern angle, which I was really surprised by.
That's cool. Very cool.
Fun that we both watched kind of classic silent films in the past.
Yeah, right? But at some point, I'm sure we'll do silent movies. I think that's in the bucket. So
yeah.
I think silent movies and like 1920s.
Yeah.
So
we hit both.
Sure will. Yeah, exactly.
Welcome to the silent 1920s episode.
Yeah, we can't talk. We'll just be video and sign language. So yeah, I mean, another thing I watched recently was a short film called An Almost Christmas Story. It's on Disney Plus, directed by David Lowery. It's like 25 minutes long. Obviously, it's December, you know, Thanksgiving just happened, if you're American. And, you know, this was a nice short film to get in the Christmas mood, get in the Christmas spirit. It's about an owl who gets lost, basically. Well, actually, whatever. There's a whole idea of deforestation because she's in a tree separate from her family, and then the tree gets cut down and she ends up in New York City and then befriends a human girl who's also lost in the city, and they go on a little Christmas adventure. It's a very, very sweet movie. The animation, I guess it's all CG, but it looks like cardboard stop motion. So it looks really cool. I really liked the visual style of it, and it's a very sweet movie. And the owl is just a little guy with big eyes, which is very cute.
We love that.
It's the cutest character design, and therefore, this is a great Christmas movie. Everyone should watch it. It's nice and short. You can watch it with the family. You can watch it with the grandparents. You can watch it with a baby.
Did you say how long it was?
25 minutes.
Ooh, nice.
I know.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's on Disney Plus. So if anyone has that, you can watch it, and I would recommend it. It was good. Also, it was co-written and produced by Alfonso Cuarón. Also, so there's some filmmaking talent behind this movie. So it's not just a throwaway animated thing. It has a unique visual style, and I liked it.
Nice.
So yeah,
I really like around this time. I really like the Rankin Bass productions, the stop motion classics. They're nice, and they're like 40 minutes or something.
Yeah,
those are always fun.
I think this is sort of supposed to be a modern version of that.
Awesome. That's what it made me think of it. So
yeah,
it sounds like they're doing a cool job. I'll have to watch that. Two other things I'll bring up that I've watched. I mean, it seems like I've watched like so many movies, but one thing is I finally finished. Actually, I might have already mentioned this, but I finished the Bloodthirsty trilogy, which is the
you talked about the first movie.
There we go.
This is the Japanese 1970s.
Yep.
Yeah.
Vampires.
Yeah, you talked about the first one, but you haven't talked about 2 or 3 yet.
So yeah, I finished. I've watched 2 and 3. 2 was Lake of Dracula. 3 is Evil of Dracula. That's 71 and 74, and they're all fantastic. The whole trilogy. I mean, Mikio Yamamoto has not made a whole lot of other movies, and from what I understand, some of that has actually become like kind of lost footage. There's one other movie I was able to find online, but I haven't watched it yet. I think it's called like Terror in the Streets or something, and I'm gonna watch that. But from these 3 movies alone, Mikio Yamamoto has become like one of my like favorite directors, like because I've only seen 3 and they're all hits, right? But yeah, I gave all of these the lowest. I gave Lake of Dracula 4 stars and a like. Evil of Dracula and The Vampire Doll both got 5 stars and a like. These movies are absolutely fantastic. I recommend everyone watch them, especially if you're into like those like vampire gothic movies. What is it, like Hammer horror from the 60s. These are clearly like taking those tropes and putting like a Japanese lens on them, and they are just so much fun. So I finally finished that trilogy.
Nice. Hell yeah. That's movies I had never heard of before, so they're pretty obscure, it seems like. So
Yeah.
Did you get the whole trilogy on Blu-ray?
Yes.
Like a box set?
Yep. So Arrow has a box, not even a box set, it's just a set with the 3 movies, and it comes with like a short documentary and a pretty.
It has really cool like posters, right?
Yeah, it
Are
does.
those the posters on Letterboxd? Are those the Arrow ones? Yeah, they look very cool.
Yeah, and you know what? They're all awesome. And I think I was looking into it. I think you can rent the Arrow version, so the reconstructions on YouTube. I think YouTube has the like official Arrow versions.
Oh, no.
So if anyone does, I think the Arrow version is Region B, unfortunately. So if anyone wants to watch them but doesn't have like a region free player, you can, I believe, rent and maybe buy them on YouTube.
Oh, gotcha. Cool.
But don't buy digital.
Yeah, right. Might as well get the Blu-ray if you can. But yeah,
just kidding.
Well, was there anything else you wanted to talk about that you watched this week?
One other I'll bring up, which is Frogman. I watched.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, this is another stupid limited edition I bought. Come on, my limited edition set right now is like almost all of my found footage. Haxan is like the only thing that's not found footage in there, and it's like it is clear. Footage. Yeah, it is clear like heritage from the genre, for the genre. But the reason I'll bring up Frogman is the movie's awesome. It's a lot of fun. The Croaks are no hoax is like the slogan.
Is that's the tagline?
Yeah,
that's awesome. The Croaks are no hoax.
So the box that I got also comes with a soundtrack for the movie.
Like a CD?
Yeah.
Wow.
But it's a found footage movie, so as you might imagine, there's not actually a lot of music in the movie.
Right.
There's like a chant that you hear during the movie. I won't spoil the movie because it's fantastic and everyone should watch it. It just came out this year, so I don't want to spoil it. But there's like a chant that you hear, so that's on the soundtrack. But then the rest of the soundtrack, there's like maybe one other song, but the rest of the soundtrack is like 35 narrated frog noises. So there's like a narrator that introduces the type of frog, and then you just hear the rivets of that frog and the croaks and the tribble and everything, or the trides and everything. And I'm gonna be honest, on my like 45-minute drive here,
listen to the whole
I was listening to Frog. I've been listening to it for like the whole week. The soundtrack's hilarious. I have 2 favorite frogs. If anyone wants to look up the big frog, big frogs sound like a horde of pigs, and the Fowler's toad, which kind of sounds like a screaming child.
Oh God.
Which I think might be like I'm realizing that some of these like frog noises, if they're like echoing or whatever, these can be like the reasons why there might be some like urban legends around certain like forests and stuff or whatever. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
I've definitely heard like a frog that sounded like a human, or just an animal or a bird or something that sounded like a human scream.
Yeah, creepy as shit.
Yeah, very creepy.
But I wrote up a little bit on Letterboxd, trying to make a little interpretation about the movie. And do you see the top like right there?
Yeah, Anthony Cousins?
Yeah, that's the director.
Really?
Yeah.
The director? Oh.
Like my Letterboxd. And I looked at this thing and it looks like it's actually the director. He doesn't like rate movies on Letterboxd, just logs them. So,
hell yeah.
Not to be that person, but
got the Letterboxd seal of approval from the director. Director approved review.
That's right. So if you want the authentic interpretation of the movie after you watch it, feel free to find me on Letterboxd.
That's cool. Hey, there you go. All right, cool. Well, good. I'm glad we talked about Frogman. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't expect it to go that way. The frog seed. Yeah, I will say the only other thing that I watched recently was Tokyo Godfathers, and that will be episode 6.5 of the show. So we're going to do Tokyo Godfathers for 6.5, sort of leading up to Christmas. And then the day after Christmas, episode 7.5 will come out, and we'll be reviewing Black Christmas, the original 1974 Bob Clark movie. That's who directed it. I don't know if we're going to watch the remakes. I will probably end up watching them.
Yeah, we're like a series. We're a series household, we say.
Yeah.
We're probably going to spend our time watching both of there's 2 remakes.
Yeah, I've never seen the remakes. I've only seen the original, but we'll probably end up watching them and talking them a little bit during the episode. But those are our next mini episodes coming up for the Christmas season. And then most likely for 8.5, we're most likely doing Nosferatu, the Robert Eggers movie that's coming out. So that's our plan for our schedule, if anyone's interested.
Yeah. If possible, we would have done Nosferatu like the day after Christmas. It comes out on Christmas, but of course we can't actually. We record these on the weekend, and then we edit them, and they come out on Thursdays. So we're gonna record it as we're hopefully as soon as possible.
It would have been cutting it close. We would have had to abandon our families on Christmas and watch the movie and record it all on Christmas Day. So it was not realistic.
Yeah.
So
yeah, because these come out at 4:00 a.m. on all of your podcast streaming sites
and YouTube.
So make sure you're following us or whatever on all those places.
You can go to our letterbox. If you search Mind Your Movies, we'll pop up. We have links to everywhere else there. Mm-hmm. All of our podcast links, YouTube, Blue Sky, Instagram, all the good stuff. And if you want to send us an email, mindyourmoviespodcast@gmail.com. Send us an email and we'll read it on the show and we'll talk about it.
Yeah. Do you have an interpretation of Frogman? Did you watch it?
No one has an interpretation. You're the only one with an interpretation. No, I'm just kidding.
Did you watch any 1920s silent movies recently? Let us know all these things.
I am interested to watch Frogman now. I never heard of Frogman until you brought it up, and now I'm curious to rib it.
As they say in the movie, Frogman fucks.
Okay, say that?
That's a quote movie.
This movie seems awesome.
It's pretty great.
Yeah. All right. Well, shit. I mean, I guess it's time to get into the meat of the episode.
Here we go.
So,
Perfect Burn.
Perfect Burn. We'll start with Perfect Blue. This was my choice for psychological thrillers. And I will say, maybe before we get into the movies, I think Perfect Blue, and so also for anyone, there are going to be spoilers for Perfect and Saltburn. Right. So if you haven't seen the movies, go check them out. There are, I would say, pretty big reveals in both movies.
Oh, yeah.
You probably want to watch them before listening to the episode.
Yeah, that's kind of, I would say that's a big thing in psychological thrillers, right? You get some big reveal or something. Yeah,
there'll be a big twist of some kind.
Yeah.
But this genre, I think these movies represent very different approaches to the genre, because Perfect Blue is really about the main character's psychological state and how she's having trouble distinguishing between reality and fantasy, or reality and the show that she's filming, and her disorientation is like depicted in the movie itself. So it's very much inside the psychology of the main character, whereas Saltburn is the main character in manipulating the other characters by like being manipulative, gaslighting, sort of psychologically manipulating all the characters around him. Spoilers, obviously. It's interesting. This movie, this time around for Saltburn, I was able to see it knowing what the ending is. So it's more interesting to see the movie knowing the motivations of each character, I think. Yeah.
I feel like these are movies, psychological thrillers in general, I think, are movies that can benefit a lot from a rewatch, because then you know the context fully. It's kind of like a murder mystery, or like many slashers, I guess. But I guess Scream is almost more of a murder mystery at times than a slasher.
Yeah. If it's well done. Sometimes if it's poorly done and the twist kind of doesn't make sense, then you rewatch it and you're like, none of this makes any sense. How could person X be in this location, all this stuff?
And there are a lot of bad plot twists out there.
Yeah, definitely. Because people are like, oh, well, you watch it the one time and then that's it. But if you rewatch it, you notice the flaws. But I think for both these movies, they hold up.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. I guess that's that for psychological thrillers. Perfect Blue came out in 1997, directed by Satoshi Kon, written by Sadayuki Murai, and apparently it's based on a novel by Yoshikazu Takeuchi. And I haven't read the novel, obviously, but I guess not obviously. I'm sure there's translations, but it does make sense that this comes from a novel, I think, because so much of the movie is like sort of in the mind of the main character. Yeah. So I could understand why this story would work really well as a novel. I don't know if it's written from the first person perspective, but I imagine it is, and you're inside her head.
Fun fact, I also have not read the novel, but from my reading, Satoshi Kon, who kind of took on the directing of this movie kind of late into the ideas of the movie, came on and actually never read the novel either, just read like the screen. There was like a version of a screenplay that was written first, so read that and then helped adapt the new screenplay. So I think it's co-written maybe by the two. But
Yeah, well, it's interesting because in the credits of the movie, I think it's just Murai is credited as a writer, but I think it's like kind of accepted that Satoshi Kon had an influence on the script and changed things as they went. But he's not, I don't think he's a credited writer.
Yeah. So I don't know if he's read the novel by now, but from my understanding, when he kind of picked up the directing role, he hasn't. And I don't know how true that is for adaptations, how often the directors have actually read the adaptation.
It's interesting because I'm thinking of like the new Dune movies there are changes, but I think they're faithful to the original work and the original intention, and the changes are made like clearly with like a reverence to the original source material. But then there are other movies like The Shining where Kubrick really just takes the idea and then he goes off on his own direction, and Stephen King hates the movie because Kubrick just made it his own thing, really. But that works. I mean, it's a great movie.
Yeah.
So there's all different ways to approach adaptation.
Right. Yeah, or you can make an adaptation for a book that's actually, the movie's actually about making the adaptation. Like, you know, one of our first movies that we covered.
Adaptation. There you go. So there are a lot of ways to that would be actually a good idea just for a podcast of just movies that are adaptations of things.
Oh yeah.
And you just like read and watch, and then you cover one thing on each episode.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
That'd be a good podcast, right? Is that
All right, guys, we're editing Mind Your Movies. We're gonna be starting.
I feel like
watch your adaptations.
Yeah, it must already exist.
Yeah, probably.
There must be something like that.
Yeah. Well, if anyone watches one of those, let us know because it'd be interesting to check it out.
Yeah. Also, interesting thing. I don't know what a cinematographer does on an animated film.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's mainly storyboarding. I don't know if it's like, I really don't know the process of what they would have done, but Hisao Shirai is the cinematographer for Perfect Blue, and he worked on like a bunch of great movies. He worked on My Neighbor Totoro, Only Yesterday, Ghost in the Shell, Millennium Actress with Satoshi Kon, and he also worked on like Neon Genesis Evangelion. So he has like a very, really solid list of credits, but I'm kind of curious what exactly a cinematographer does on an animated film. I'm not sure.
That'd be another great thing to let us know. If you guys know, we would love to read a description of what they do on the podcast.
I'd imagine it must just have to do with storyboarding, but it seemed like on the Blu-ray there's an interview with Satoshi Kon, and I only watched part of it, to be honest. I got distracted and didn't end up finishing it. But he talked about like drawing storyboards.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I have no idea.
Maybe from those storyboards, a cinematographer like decides how the camera moves and looks, or like what perspective to move through those storyboards or something. I don't know.
Maybe.
But
I have no idea.
It's a very interesting question. I don't know.
Yeah. It could just be a collaborator with the director of just the visual language of things. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Before we jump too far into the movie, though, while we're kind of sidetracking a little bit, the ratings for this movie are astonishing. This is on, at least, I didn't look too far, but I know this is on, it has the little crown and letterbox. I think it's in the top 250 narrative films of all time on Letterboxd. I think it's like it's in the 60s, somewhere to 60 to 80 or something like that.
Yep.
And it's also, by no surprise, the current highest rated movie we've covered.
Wow.
Based on the averages that I do. Did you find it?
It's currently number 64 on the Letterboxd top 250.
That's impressive. So it's got 84% on Rotten Tomatoes, 89% audience score, 8 out of 10 on IMDb, 4.4 out of 5 on Letterboxd, giving it an average by our metric as 8.525. Our highest by a decent bit. I think our highest before this was like 8.1 or so.
Yeah.
So,
well,
seems obviously pretty well regarded.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, so also I saw this movie in theaters back in I think 2018. Nice. I feel like they do that with anime movies sometimes of bring them back, and they'll show like for 1 week here and there. So I was very lucky to see this in theaters, and that was my first time ever seeing it. So I think it was a great experience, and I really enjoyed the movie, but watching this the first time around is like, I mean, the movie's intentionally disorienting and like kind of hard to follow. So seeing it in the theater was kind of just, the experience kind of just washed over me, and I was like, that was awesome, but I don't fully know what I just watched.
Yeah.
So this time around, I was able to follow it a little bit better, but there was still a million times where I was like, okay, this is real. No, it's not. No, it's a dream now. And it's like, wait a minute. No, it's not. This is the movie. Oh God. Like, it's just very disorienting experience, this movie. But yeah, it was cool seeing it in the theater, and then rewatching it on the Blu-ray I liked it just as much.
Yeah. Nice.
So yeah, I mean, I don't think this is a movie that we can necessarily go through the plot. I think it would be too confusing to go through a full plot summary.
It'd be kind of hilarious to hear what we thought the plot was. Also, I will say, so you have the Blu-ray for this. Something that I think is good for us to call out each time, maybe, is how we've watched it. So you watched it on the Blu-ray this time. I ended up renting this on YouTube. It was the only place I could really find easy to get it. I think it's on Amazon Prime maybe also, but I don't have Amazon anymore. So.
Oh, gotcha. But, yeah, I watched it with subtitles also.
Yeah.
Did you do subtitles?
I did. Good call. Yep.
I mean, really, anime is the only genre where we have to... I feel like if we watch a foreign movie, obviously, if it's live action, we're going to watch the original language with subtitles.
Right.
But in an anime, it's a little more accepted to watch a dub, but I prefer subtitles.
Yeah.
Usually.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically, I mean, we can start. The movie starts with a live performance of. Well, actually, no. It starts with like these Powertrons, which are kind of like a parody of Power Rangers, and then Cham. C-H-A-M? Cham?
Like,
I guess?
Yeah, like
a sham? I don't know.
Yeah, sham.
Yeah. The girl group that Mima is the main character. She's in a girl pop group, a trio, and they perform at the beginning. And it's sort of intercutting between the performance and her daily life. Mm-hmm. And actually, like, I think the first shot after the title card is Mima's reflection in a train window. Yeah. And I thought that was definitely intentional, like, relates to the themes of the movie.
And that, of course, that comes back too, the reflection in the train window.
Yeah, there's a lot of use of like reflections and like crossfades and just the dreamy nature of those kind of things. I think the movie emphasizes that. So yeah, there's a creepy looking guy at her live performance. And then, you see her daily thing. She's going on the train, she's going grocery shopping, etc. And then, I mean, long story short, like, she leaves the band to become an actress, and she opens like a fan letter, and it mentions this website, or it mentions Mima's room. Yeah. Turns out it's a website where someone is writing a diary of her day, but it's all completely accurate. Like, they know what milk she's buying from the grocery shopping earlier and all this stuff.
There's a fun part there when she's like trying to she's trying to figure out what the letter means, and I think it's Rumi who helps her find the website, but there's a fun dialogue in there of really early, I mean, this is 1997, right? So like early internet, and like the ambiguity of what a link means and how to do stuff on the internet. And I thought that was just a fun part to watch, with like, obviously, where you guys are watching this on the internet, listening or watching on the internet. We use the internet every single day, and a fun reminder that in 97 it was not like that. Yeah. No, yeah. It is interesting. Also, Rumi helping her find the website has awkward, different implications knowing the twist. But yeah, it is interesting seeing the early internet, and also like, that could also play into the ideas of not knowing what's real and what's not. Is when you're on the internet, it's hard to distinguish what is real and what's fake, and it's sort of this world where we don't understand what's really going on. Like, if I had to explain how the internet works, I truly have no idea. I go on a computer, I barely know how that works, and then I go to a website, and then I am able to access all this information. I mean, how the hell do even vinyl records work? Yeah. Modern technology, no one knows how anything works. Nobody. There's grooves in vinyl, and then it makes a song? Then it makes no sense. What the hell is the internet? Well, none of it makes any sense. So basically, so that maybe was a vibe in the air in the 90s, and clearly still there. But yeah, the ambiguity of when you're online, right? You're not sure if what you're seeing is real, right? I mean, there's today like catfishing and fake news, right? You can talk about all these other ways that that's interpreted today. But yeah, I'm sure that was a thing in 97, right? Where people were probably anti-internet people, right? It was just new, right? So I'm sure there was a big crowd of people that were against the internet. And I'm sure a lot of them were particularly like talking about how people might not know what's real on there and whatnot. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, so yeah.
Anyway,
what happens?
Yeah.
She finds Mima's room, and then she gets a creepy call from the stalker.
Yeah, it's something like,
I did not like that. Cut that. Editor, cut that. Cut that out.
well, that's what the call
That is
I just put
actually
the audio in. From the
That's
call.
what it sounds like. Also, yeah. But yeah, that happens. I wish that didn't happen. And she's freaked out. And then there's a really great shot that's like a close up of her face, and then it pulls out to show her on her balcony or like through a window and show the whole city.
Oh man,
It was just a really great shot.
just in general, the shots in this, even like the first shots of the thing after the Power Ranger stuff, it's like it tracks one person walking through the crowd, and then they like intersect with another group that's walking another way, and then it tracks them, and you're hearing all the dialogue, and then it keeps tracking different. Oh man, and that's just like one example, but like right from the beginning, the cinematography in this, you could say, is fantastic, and so it really does make you wonder, like, what does the cinematographer into this dude? Is he the one that makes those decisions of how the camera moves and interacts? I don't know, but
but either way, the visual language of the movie is really fantastic, and the visual storytelling of everything, especially as we get into the dreamy sequences, just with editing and cinematography and stuff, it sort of blends reality and fiction and all these kind of things in a very interesting way. So I think the cinematography in this movie is really great. Also, there's a lot of like bright white stuff. Obviously the title card is like this bright white, and you can kind of just barely make out the title. Like it's white text on a bright white background, but a lot of the light coming in through a window or stuff like that will be this like bright white that's almost like a little overexposed. But obviously it's animated, so they did that intentionally. But I think it does give the whole movie a dreamy atmosphere that just helps with the themes of the movie, and it just is great to look at. Just watching the movie. Obviously, this movie has a very dark subject matter, especially as it goes on, but just the cinematography of it all, I think, is like something I could imagine just rewatching and just enjoying the aesthetics of it. And I think Tokyo Godfathers, which is Satoshi Kon's third movie, we'll talk about that next week, but that is a more rewatchable, lighthearted version that has a similar quality of like the cinematography. It's sort of cozy and rewatchable. And I feel like the beginning of this movie has that vibe to me, but then as the movie goes on, obviously it's like, oh, I don't know that I want to rewatch these parts.
And also, speaking of, so Tokyo Godfathers is the third movie by Satoshi Kon. And I don't know if we mentioned, but this is his debut. I don't know that, but
very, very impressive debut movie. Got to be one of the most impressive. Obviously, we did debut features. There's Eraserhead, Citizen Kane. I mean, this is like actually up there with those movies, I think, as one of the greatest features, debut features from a director of all time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he has obviously Satoshi Kon like passed away in 2010. He had some kind of cancer. I forget what kind of cancer, but you can look it up. But yeah, he has a pretty small filmography, but all of his movies are really good, really fantastic. And so he has a small but really solid filmography. And this is an impressive debut. So is there anything you wanted to mention about this beginning of the movie?
I think that's pretty much, well, the last thing that I have as a note before we get into the less fun part, maybe, is just the piano score is like really chilling and interesting and works really well. I think it's very simple and really effective at what it's trying to do here.
Yeah, I think just the sound design of everything is very creepy, and it works perfect for setting the tone of everything. Yeah. So I mean, basically the next thing, Mima keeps seeing this creepy looking stalker guy around, and it's kind of unclear if she's imagining him or if he's really stalking her everywhere. But her agent, well, it seems like she has, I don't know, she has like an agent and a manager maybe. Is that how it works? The man is her agent, and then the woman Rumi is her manager.
Maybe
perhaps?
that sounds right.
So she is like trying to be an actress. She's on set for a TV show, sort of like NCIS, CSI, Law and Order type of show. It seems like.
Yeah, Double Bind.
Double Bind, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't sure as double. Okay, so Double Bind is a TV show that she's on.
Yeah, but
because at the end, I thought Double Bind was a movie, but then I was getting confused.
I think that this whole thing is a TV show.
Yeah,
but at times they talk about it like it's a movie, and I'm not sure if that's intentional or if that's just like terminology, like if it's just like kind of fluid terminology. Like,
yeah, I don't know.
Maybe it doesn't matter as much.
They could be filming a movie, like perhaps because she has this one scene with one line, the first thing they're filming, and then she has a more in-depth stuff later on. Maybe there's a movie spin-off of the TV show, or it's just a new season. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought that it was just another episode or another season or something that she's doing. But it is weird because I think at times they do refer to it different ways, and the way that they talk about it and everything makes it sound like a movie.
Yeah.
And so I don't really know. But
the thing that confused me was that there's one point where there's people, it seemed like, I think they were in a video store maybe, and there's a poster of Double Bind on the wall, and it made it just look like a movie to me just because of the poster, but it could just be a poster for a TV show.
Well, and there's like a huge billboard at one point when she's on the train and she sees the big billboard.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Maybe that's more of a thing for television in Japan in the 90s. Maybe that was more common.
Yeah, it definitely could be.
So I think it's just a TV show.
Yeah.
I think. But yeah, so they're filming this first episode. She has one line, and her agent, the man, opens a letter and it explodes, and he doesn't die or anything, but he's injured. And it seems like it says it's a warning that the next one will be for real.
And he doesn't want to go to the cops or anything. He says, it's fine, let's just move on.
Yeah.
Whereas I think Mima and Rumi kind of, at first at least, wanted to maybe get it addressed.
Yeah, I don't know about Rumi. This time I was watching it, honestly, I didn't fully remember the reveal at the end that Rumi is the killer.
Yeah.
Just because the first time watching this, it's hard. Also, it was like 6 years ago, so
yeah,
I didn't really remember it. So I'd be curious to go back and watch that scene. Like, is Rumi secretly like, don't worry about it, like we don't have to call the cops, or is she trying to act like she's innocent or anything like that? Yeah,
that is interesting.
But yeah, basically, there's a lot of there's a lot of close-ups in here, and a lot of crossfades and dissolves that I thought were really interesting. So yeah, just other elements of the cinematography that I really appreciated. And when they mentioned Double Bind, the random bystanders mention psycho thrillers in Japan.
Yes, which, they say something like they're always like this or something, and I thought that was a fun little meta throwaway line.
Yes. So basically, Cham is now a duo. They're having some success without her, so maybe she's feeling a little...
Yeah, and she overhears them saying, Cham's going to be just fine as a duo or something.
Yes.
Cham's going to do great as a duo or something.
Yes. And then Mima, basically, they offer her a bigger part in the show. They're going to have her character have like a second storyline, and it involves her being raped. Yeah, I guess whatever. Trigger warning for anyone. There's a very disturbing scene in this movie of filming a rape scene, but it, like, the way it's all depicted could very much be triggering for people, I think.
Oh, yeah.
But obviously it's not, in the context of the movie, it's still not a real assault in a way, but it does have, like, psychological effects on her. Like, when they first mentioned... Well, it does, right? Yeah, during it, really. They mention it to her, and her agent... The manager, Rumi, is like, oh, don't do this. Like, you're innocent. Like, don't do this. And then the agent is kind of like, oh, it's no big deal. Like, whatever. And she doesn't want to be a problem. So when you're first watching the scene, it seems like, oh, she's actually fine with it. She doesn't care. But later on, you realize she was just kind of being nice, going along with everything because she wanted, she didn't actually want to do it.
Right.
So when they film it, it's very it's disturbing.
Rough. Yeah.
She's like dissociating during the filming, and it almost feels like a real like rape scene.
Yeah.
Pretty fucked up.
Yeah, it is. And it's pretty drawn out. The director like cuts a couple times and has them like stay in position while I think he wants the lights to be different or the cameras to be different once or twice, and the whole time is very uncomfortable, and it's a hard scene to watch.
There's a moment where like they call cut and they have to stay still
Yeah.
where they are, and the actor that's like on top of her is like, sorry about this.
Yeah.
And she's like, it's okay. And then, but it's still clearly a very traumatizing scene. And I think this scene really is sort of a catalyst for her like deteriorating mental state through the rest of the movie.
Yeah. Well, and there's one point before she actually does the scene where she after she agrees to it, she sees her reflection in the train again, and her reflection says, I would never agree to that, or something like that, right?
Yeah. And the reflection is the pop star, sort of more innocent version of herself.
Yes. And so she's clearly like conflicted like right away, even though like you're right when she accepts it or whatever, but like her agent's like, you should do this, and then she's like, okay, yeah, whatever. It doesn't feel like she really cares a lot in that moment, but then like like she sees her reflection in the train and it's clear she's conflicted. And then afterwards, similar, like she's in the car with her agent and the agent's like, oh, Rumi had to leave. Rumi was very upset.
Yeah.
And she's all kind of like cheery and jittery in the car. But then when she gets back, she sees like, she thinks her fish are dead, but they turn out not to be, but she looks in the fish tank and sees them. And then she just collapses. She is sobbing all over her bed. And
she says like, of course I didn't want to do it. Like,
right. So yeah, she makes it clear. And I think it is clear even like right when she collapses why, but they do throw in that line just so you know, like, she's not just crying over the fish, obviously, right?
Yeah.
It's this whole thing.
Yeah. I think this whole aspect is easy, like, because parts of it include her acting like everything is okay in front of other people, and then when she's alone, she's able to express how she's really feeling. It can be like, and it's in a foreign language, it's animated, the movie's like hard to follow in certain ways. So I think this is like an aspect that definitely just went over my head the first time I was watching this.
Yeah.
But this time around, I think this was a really poignant and sad aspect of the movie. And yeah, I think it seems, I mean, this is kind of like a movie by a bunch of men as far as I understand, but it seems like a very compassionate and just accurate portrayal of how these kinds of things would happen in like not in Hollywood or in Japan or just in the entertainment industry in general, and the ways women can be taken advantage of or, you know, manipulated by the system and producers and people with more power. So yeah, it's pretty fucking sad subject matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is very rough.
And this is like an element of the movie that honestly I just didn't remember. Like, so yeah, perhaps maybe I would have chosen a different movie if I had remembered this aspect being so just depressing, but it's still, you know, it's worth talking about. Obviously, it's like a real part of life. Hopefully things have changed and gotten better over time. This is almost 30 years ago now, so, you know, but probably not. That's probably too optimistic a way of looking at it. But yeah, so this is a very disturbing part of the movie.
It is. But it's powerful, and it's important for her like transition into this like loss of clarity on reality and everything.
Yeah.
After this, I think like after she wakes up from having broken down from the fish thing, I think right away she sees that pop icon version of herself again.
Yeah.
In the room.
Yep. Yeah. So that's definitely the breaking point sort of for her. But yeah, also at one point we see the stalker in his room, which I thought was interesting to show his like den
lair.
Yeah, his lair. It is like a lair. So yeah. And then pretty soon after that, the screenwriter gets murdered in the elevator. He's like in a parking lot, and it's kind of a creepy scene, and then his eyes are gouged out in the elevator, and that's that.
Yeah.
It's really well done.
Yeah. Oh my God. And then the elevator opens. I mean, and you just see this destroyed, mangled corpse with the eyes gouged out and blood all over the elevator.
Yeah.
The death scenes in this, the kills and everything, are like incredible, grotesque, and interesting. But yeah, I was not expecting that from this movie. It might be like the most grotesque animated kills I've ever seen.
Probably, yeah. I mean, usually animation is not as brutal as this movie, I guess. But yeah, so and then at one point she does like a nude photo shoot with a creepy photographer.
Yeah.
So sort of just reinforcing the negative aspects of the entertainment industry. And what she feels like she has to do these things in order to be successful, or she feels like if she doesn't, she won't. Like it'll stop her career or something like that. So yeah, that, and also in the show that she's in Double Bind, her character, she's a stripper who gets raped and has split personality disorder, and then I think in the show she is a murderer.
Yeah, she kills. Is it maybe the perpetrator?
Maybe, I'm not sure.
I don't remember who,
but she has split personality disorder, DID, dissociative identity disorder, and when she's in the other identity, she murders people, I guess. So it's very much reflecting Mima after filming the scene having sort of this dissociative identity aspect to her real life.
Yeah, and after the scene, there's this version this scene where she's shooting an episode at the pier, and it's like cutting between that and the scene with Rumi in her room.
Yes.
And I don't remember actually what she's doing in the apartment, Rumi, but anyways, it's cutting between these two scenes. Like she wakes up, and then she's like back at the pier, and then she wakes up again, and then she's back at the pier.
Yes.
And she's not, and then she says, "Oh, that was yesterday. That actually happened."
Yeah.
And there's this really, really like incredible playing with time and reality there, and it really that sequence really got me.
Yeah, 100%. And there's actually, I guess it's sort of foreshadowing the ending of the movie, because I think right before that sequence that you're talking about, where the days are repeating and she's getting lost, she has a dream that she's chasing her pop idol version of herself through the streets. Yes. And I think the pop version of herself gets hit by a bus.
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
So that happens right before that. Yes. So, and then that's repeated in the climax.
That's interesting. Yeah, I remember that, but I don't think I realized the connection with the ending yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, it's totally, there's a lot going on, so it's hard to keep track of all this. Like, just the thematic, like, there is a lot going on in this movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically, as far as the plot goes, like, there's that sort of dreamy playing with reality, and then the photographer gets killed also.
Yes.
By a pizza man, or pizza delivery person. I guess it's Rumi, in theory.
Yeah, but it seems like it makes you think that it's Mima, and it kind of,
yes,
like I thought that she was maybe having this dream, and I think she does have a dream about it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, they really mess with you here because
it seems like Mima's the killer.
Mima has a dream about it.
Yes.
But Rumi's the one that does it dressed as, or maybe not dressed as the pizza person.
Yeah.
But
well, because at the end, well, even when Mima is chasing Rumi, we see Rumi as Mima.
Right.
So then there will be a time where she crosses like a reflection, a mirror or something, and you see Rumi's face.
Right. And
you just see it in the reflection for a second. But so it's very confusing. I think that was also an aspect that's confusing the first time around when I sang it too, of not knowing what was really going on.
Yeah, and I think that pizza scene really takes advantage of that.
Yeah.
And makes you think that Mima did it.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know if it's right away after or soon after that she finds the bag.
Yeah, there's a bag of bloody clothes, the pizza clothes, I think, in her closet. But obviously, it really seems like Mima doesn't have any friends or family or support system.
Yeah.
And Rumi is really taking advantage of that and is the number one support system in her life. So I'm sure she has access to the apartment all the time and could just place it in the closet.
Right.
But yeah, that ice pick, or the photographer getting killed with the ice pick to the eye, like that is a pretty brutal.
Yeah. Yeah, the kills in this, I mean, oh man. There's not even a lot. We get a couple more at the end, but the kills in this are really good.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think we're getting to the climax now. I mean, if we just go through, there's a scene where the creepy stalker guy is on set. I think it's at the rap party for like the end of the season or whatever, and he like tries to sexually assault her, and then she ends up hitting him in the head with a hammer.
Yeah.
And he died. Well, I guess he dies, but then doesn't she go back and then there's no one there or something like that?
Yes, but then, well, so what happens, I think, is that she hits him in the head with a hammer. He gets knocked out.
Yeah.
And then so Rumi at this point has gone into the building to quote, look for Mima, because she hasn't returned yet. And I thought that she kills the stalker guy, Me Mania.
Yeah, Me Mania. Yeah.
I think Rumi kills him because he like fucked up, right?
Right.
He's like, you weren't supposed to. This is just my interpretation. This isn't direct, but I thought she was like, dude, you're supposed to like
help
not
her.
Yeah, why are you assaulting her, right?
Yeah.
So she kills him because he has like the stab in the eye, and then later on there's another body that we get seen right on top of his. So I assume that Rumi did both.
I think it's the agent, the
Yeah.
male agent. You see both of their dead bodies.
So I thought Rumi came back and killed him. Like,
Yes. Yeah, I think you're right.
so Mima knocks him out, Rumi kills him.
Yeah. So yeah, and then it reveals to us that Rumi has been doing the killing basically, and Rumi stabs Mima. I think.
Yes.
I have it written down here.
In the
she
shoulder.
Stabs her. Yeah, in the shoulder. And then Mima like jumps from a roof like across an alley. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And they
very
go,
reminiscent of that dream.
Yeah. Yep. And she they go on a chase through the streets, and eventually, Rumi also stabs Mima with an umbrella. I think.
Yes, a little bit later, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, at some point.
Later on, toward the end of the.
Which is reminiscent, I think, during the dream. Didn't the fake Mima have an umbrella, maybe? I don't know.
Perhaps.
I might be man, there's a lot in this movie.
There's a lot. Yeah, I mean...
But then that chase sequence was really cool.
Yeah.
Where Mima is being chased by Mima, but the secondary Mima is actually Rumi, but we only see that, like you said, in the reflections. This reflection stuff really gets into one of what I think is one of the main themes of the movie, and I'm sure is well documented, but...
Yeah.
But the chase scene was great, and then there's a point where she tries to stab Mima and hits a mirror, and the mirror shatters.
So yeah.
And then she falls into the mirror, and Rumi gets stabbed with one of the mirror shards.
Yes.
Which is really interesting that she's getting killed by the reflection, which is the only way that we saw the true version of her.
Good point.
And then she's like kind of stumbling and walks into the street and almost gets hit by a bus.
Mima saves her.
Yep. And then the very last scene, I think, is Mima at a hospital. This seems to be like maybe years later or something. I don't know. Or at least a bit.
Months later. Time has passed.
Yeah. And yeah, so she's visiting.
She's visiting, and then the last shot is, she's walking to her car, and people are like, oh, is that Mima Kirigo or something?
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, must just be an impersonator. And then she gets in her car and she looks in the mirror, looks right at the camera, and says, she looks at the rearview mirror and looks at the camera via the mirror and says, no, I'm real. And then gives almost like a thumbs up, yeah. And then that's the end of the movie. She doesn't actually do the thumbs up thing, but she's like, no, I'm real. But it's a weirdly happy ending, almost that seems too happy. I'm like, is this real? Is this imagined?
Yeah.
Is this all a dream? Because she does get stabbed a couple times. Is this all just a dream?
That's the end.
Yeah. What is real versus is this ending just in her imagination? But yeah, that whole thing with her getting stabbed by the mirror makes way more sense now that you mention it. When I was watching, I was like, this is a weird thing that it reminded me of, but it reminded me of the first Spider-Man movie where a bad guy gets killed, but Spider-Man doesn't kill him because Spider-Man, there's a pipe on the floor and the bad guy stumbles and falls out and he just happens to die, but because Spider-Man's the main character, Spider-Man can't kill someone, so they make a contrived way to avoid the main character killing someone. So that's how I just thought of it at first, that was a little contrived just so that Mima doesn't actually do the murdering,
right? Just
so she keeps her hands clean a little bit. But now that you mentioned the thematic relevance of it, I think that's why they did it. They executed it that way.
Yeah. Which I think is so I was saying that it gets into one of the main themes. I think there's the clear theme of reality and stuff, but one of the other themes that I think is very obvious is the oneself and others, the blending of oneself and others, where you're seeing Mima, but it's actually Rumi, and Mima presumably sees Mima, but at times Rumi. She mentions that's Rumi, but then we're seeing her perspective, I assume. So she thinks she's getting chased by like that pop icon version of herself. And so there's this idea of like who you are and who other people are and how do you fit into the world and stuff like that. And there's this clear tension with that for her all the way from the beginning of like, is this choice of moving to film or TV or whatever the right choice for her, right? And she's clearly conflicted about that, like right away.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we can all kind of resonate with like those hard choices and like being unsure of what the future might look like and having this like idolized version of what could have been, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the pop icon version of her. But then there's that whole like one versus self or others versus self thing that goes on later on. And I think that's interesting that Rumi gets killed by the thing that shows herself.
Yeah.
And not Mima. But
yeah, and her moving to be an actress is like, that is what being an actress is. You're seeing reflections of yourself everywhere. You're a photograph. That's all it is just a reflection of light of yourself. Like, but it's all these images of yourself. And I could see how that could be distorting. And I think that relates to those themes as well of her identity being very fluid and her having like struggling with how she's perceived maybe and how she sees herself.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe her being in the public eye has taken over her self-image and she doesn't know who she is, and maybe that's part of the reason she's vulnerable to like having this dissociation from reality.
Yeah, and there's a lot of like talk of like impersonator at times, like that word gets used a few times. I don't exactly remember the context, but
yeah,
again, like kind of hitting home that idea of like people don't know, like there's this version of her that they see on TV and in pictures and stuff, but there's also this version of her that's real and might seem not like the real version that they know.
Right. Yeah. No, yeah, that 100% makes sense because the stalker is this idealized version of her in his head. Mm-hmm. And that's not really her, but that's how he sees her. And that goes really for the whole like public. And then maybe the ending is really just a happy ending of her almost conquering this like false version of herself. And at the end she says, I'm real. Yeah. So she is able to conquer that and be her real self.
Even looking through the mirror.
Yeah.
Even looking in the reflection to see herself, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's, I mean, all the mirror and reflection imagery and everything clearly, I think, hints at all this stuff. And I think this theme is a little bit more subtle than the reality shifting theme. But I also think it's much more like interesting and meaningful. Obviously the other part is really cool too, but I really kind of latched onto this one, I think, while watching.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. It's just that the blending of dreams and reality is a thing in like 3 of his 4 movies. So I think that's part of the reason that is like maybe the most talked about aspect of the movie. Mm-hmm. And maybe because it's easier to say, man, I was confused by this movie because the movie's intentionally confusing, rather than actually like getting into the psychological aspects of the character and those themes, because I think those are like harder to get into. Like definitely the first time I saw it, I would not have been able to understand those aspects of the movie as much as now on a rewatch. Yeah. So I think you're right. I think maybe the blending of dream and reality and the aesthetics of that are used to tell the story and the characters and those themes very effectively. Yeah. And it puts us, the audience, in that state of mind. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and we have that kind of, listen, I studied English a little bit in college, but I forget the type of irony where you know the information, the audience knows, but we don't have that, right? We have the exact information. Yeah. And we have the information, instead of that, we have the information that, for the most part, that Mima has, right? Which is why when we see the pizza person killing the person, like, I was convinced that was just her dream, because for the whole movie, pretty much, we just see stuff from her eyes.
Yeah.
But yeah, very interesting.
So dramatic irony is when the audience knows something that the characters don't.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
I think that's what
I'm trying to get to. I don't remember the name.
So this doesn't use that. This keeps us in her perspective, yes.
Which is really interesting. And kind of hints more maybe even at that whole self versus others stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that is maybe an aspect of this being animated, that it gives them so much more freedom to do that blending of dream and reality, and a lot, maybe just more freedom, because you can draw whatever you want.
Yeah.
It's probably would be a little bit more difficult to get that same effect in a live action movie. Obviously you can, like there are movies that do that, but I think the animation, they use the animated form to their benefit in exploring those ideas.
Question about all this stuff. This movie would have been very confusing to me, and was very confusing at times. But I think it would have been much more confusing to me if I didn't go in with this lens of talking about it on the podcast and taking notes and stuff.
Yeah.
During this whole process of watching movies and taking notes and whatever, I know you might even have more, like you have more of a background of this from school and stuff even, but do you find that you get more out of a movie when you're watching it for the podcast versus not? Or do you think there's like, what do you think about that? I don't know.
I think so. I think so, because if I watch, like, let's say The Passion of Joan of Arc, I did get a lot out of that, but I think if we were covering it on the podcast, I would maybe put more effort into like crystallizing my thoughts and putting it all together. Whereas when I watched it, I was more able to just appreciate it just in the moment and let it wash over me, and I'm not necessarily worried about like intellectualizing it. But I think for the podcast, when you're taking notes and actively trying to figure that stuff out, I do think you can get more out of it, like on a thematic level.
Yeah. I found myself thinking that. Yeah. And like this movie was a good example, I think, of like at the end of this movie, there was some parts where I was still like, but for the most part, I came out with like, I think a better understanding than I would have. Like, let me tell you, the first time watching Memento, I was like, what the hell?
Yeah, right.
But I think like watching a movie like this kind of reminds me of that in the sense of its confusing aspects, right? And I think watching this with this lens of talking about it with you in this media, I was like, I feel like I just came out of it with a better understanding of what actually happened, but also like the themes and stuff. Yeah. And I think that was really cool. I've been enjoying this, and I think that's a cool thing to get out of it, is just a better conceptualization of the movies and what they're doing. Yeah,
definitely. I think taking notes like while watching a movie can be very helpful, as long as it's not distracting. Yeah. Because sometimes it can be, I don't know, if you're focusing too much on the notes or taking too detailed of notes, it can be distracting. But it can, at least I took like in college, I took like a writing film criticism class. And so I would take some notes during that, and then you can just look back at it and use it for reference. But there's that whole idea of like when you write something down, it like stays in your memory more clearly. So it's like in class, you're supposed to write notes to remember it better. So maybe that also works for watching these movies, where when you're writing notes for them, it sticks with you a little bit better. Yeah, totally. Or your thoughts do, at least.
Also, an interesting part of the whole, if it doesn't distract you, I would say, because of this movie being subtitled, similar to A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, which was also subtitled. I think in both those movies, it was harder to take the notes, right? Yeah. Because you can't just hear the thing and know what you're missing by the moments that you're writing, right? Yeah. So anyways.
Yeah, definitely. But also, if you're watching at home, it has the benefit of, if you miss something, you can just go back. Okay, we'll end it 10 seconds or whatever. Yeah, and pause if you need to. Yeah, and you're not bringing your notes to the theaters, you know. No, I did do that though, like for that class. Like I had a little notebook. I watched Phantom Thread, but that was my second time seeing Phantom Thread. But I remember like when I was taking notes for that in the theater, just a thought, like having a thought about the soundtrack and like noting like, oh, the drum, I forget what it was, but it was like, oh, this aspect is really good. I would have never remembered that to put it in the review if I hadn't written it down in the moment, like when I was listening to it, you know. Totally. Which, I mean, it would be like hilarious to do a podcast episode where we didn't take notes. And we just like go off memory for the whole thing. That would be psychological thrillers. Not the one to do that. Well, it's funny because I watched Tokyo Godfathers just to watch it, because it was the last Satoshi Kon movie that I hadn't seen, and we're getting toward Christmas. I just wanted to watch it. So I didn't take notes while I was watching that. So I don't know if I'm going to go back and skim through and take some notes, or I don't know. Was there a movie? I think there was a movie that like, oh no, Trap. I almost did that with Trap, but I did end up going back to rewatch it. Yeah. But anyways. Right. Well, I guess, is that for Perfect Blue? I mean, we kind of got into the themes, everything about it. Overall, I loved it.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I gave it 4.5 out of 5 again. Yeah.
I almost gave it 4.5, but I gave it 5 stars.
Oh, yeah, nice.
I came out of this movie. I think if you can get past the rape scene, which I think they use that with good purpose here.
Yeah.
It still is a hard scene to watch.
Yeah.
I don't think everyone can actually make it through that scene, obviously. But I think if you can, this is like a masterpiece.
Yeah. Totally agree. Awesome. Hell yeah. Another 5 stars.
Yeah. We've been watching banger after banger.
I know, right? Well, that's the thing. I feel like with the show, I try to pick good movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, next one, I think also a banger. Maybe a lot less culturally, what's the word I'm saying? Culturally accepted as a great movie. I think that this one has a lot more mixed reviews.
Mhm.
Some people love it, some people hate it, some everywhere in between. But yeah, should we get into Saltburn?
Yeah. Let's do it.
So
Also, I might just throw in a quick comment here that we're about to enter Saltburn. So if you are skipping ahead to avoid a trigger warning that we will put in the beginning of this episode, this is a good time to continue watching.
yeah,
We're going to be talking about Saltburn.
yes. So yeah, Saltburn is a 2023 movie, written, directed, and produced by Emerald Fennell. Also, Margot Robbie is a producer on this movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is Emerald Fennell's second movie after Promising Young Woman. And then she's making an adaptation of Wuthering Heights that's supposed to come out. Right? I don't know I think it's in production now, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's came out last year. It has I don't know. I mean, should we just get into it? Do you wanna talk about the average ratings and general audience reaction to this movie?
Yeah. And one thing to note real quick, is that this movie is 2 hours and 11 minutes.
Is that one of our longest that we've covered?
Definitely. We got a few in that boat now. We've got
Independence Day is the longest.
Yeah, and The Substance was pretty long also.
Yeah, true.
But I think Independence Day is still the longest. But yeah, interesting. Perfect Blue is an hour less than that, pretty much.
Yeah.
It's an hour and 21 minutes.
It's only 82 minutes.
Yeah.
Or 81. Or
whatever it is, yeah. So, little side note, but this has 71% on Rotten Tomatoes, 79% audience, 7 out of 10 IMDb, 3.4 out of 5 on Letterboxd, averaging out at 7.2, which is higher than I expected.
Yeah.
I heard pretty mixed things when this came out, and I wanted to see it when it came out, but I never ended up doing that. And I heard kind of mixed things. Some people I knew loved it, and then some people I knew did not like it at all. And I think that kind of, I don't know if that really turned me away from watching it or if I just got busy or something, I don't remember. But so the 7.2 average is kind of nice to see. That's pretty high.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable balances out. Because yeah, you're right. People have all sorts of reactions to this. I did see this in theaters. I saw it with my girlfriend in theaters, and I really enjoyed it. And I think it, for such a big, wide release, like popular movie, yet obviously this is not like some giant blockbuster, but it has some names in it, and it has, a pretty big budget and wide release. I was shocked by several scenes in this movie. I was like, wow, I'm sitting in like a suburban multiplex watching what I'm watching. Like I think there was 1 or 2 scenes where literally my jaw dropped. I was like, I can't believe I'm watching what I'm watching. So, yeah. And I found that to be a fun experience. I was like, yeah, go wild, Emerald Fennell and filmmakers. Like this, I found it to be a very fun experience. It's funny. The dialogue is funny. And I think I have seen Promising Young Woman, her first movie. And I'd have to rewatch it to give it like a really fair review. But I remember the tone of that movie being, because it's, not to bring up another thing that we just had a trigger warning about, but the whole point of the movie is about sexual assault and those things. And I think the tone was managed in a little bit of a weird way for me in that movie. But in this, I think having a much less serious subject matter allows the movie to be funny and comedic without feeling out of place with regards to the story and all that. Obviously, technically, this is about murder and dark themes, yeah. But it's sort of in a heightened, unrealistic way to where I think the comedy is allowed to shine through, kind of.
Yeah. And to a total contrast of Perfect Blue,
Oh yeah.
this movie is very like kind of upbeat and like and witty and fun. Perfect Blue is a great movie, but oh man, that movie was depressing.
Yeah.
This movie is not quite that. This movie, even the ending is like, you know, it's well, we'll get into it, but yeah, I think it's like overall a much more fun experience.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like I think this time around for me, it was actually more poignant early on, because really the beginning of the movie, the first like 30 minutes are all set up at the school, and then there's a lot of partying, a lot of getting to know the characters, stuff like that. So really the first like half of the movie, it doesn't get into like the darker aspects of the story. And it's funny, and there's a good soundtrack. It's set in 2006 or 2000 into 2007, I think. So it has like a lot of good music from that era, and it's very enjoyable to watch. But knowing where the movie's going, several scenes have like a much more sad undertone to them for me, because the Jacob Elordi character, Felix, this is how he came off to me this time. He comes off very genuine and just like a good person.
Yeah.
And seeing that be taken advantage of by Oliver, played by Barry Keoghan, is a lot. It's sad, really. There's multiple scenes early on that do have that sad undertone, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think.
Did you know what the twist was and where it was going beforehand?
Unfortunately, I did.
Okay.
But yeah, so I didn't know, like, there's some stuff that's explained at the end that I didn't fully know, but pretty much only the stuff that they kind of have to explain at the end, I think, which I don't even know when we get there. But
you knew that
I knew that
Ollie is the villain.
Yeah. And my understanding was that somebody, like, I don't remember if I read a review or if it was actually someone that I knew that told me this, but at one point I heard somebody mention, like, American Psycho in relation to this. And that's very, like, obviously the protagonist of that movie is a psychopath killer. And so I was like, interesting. So the protagonist of this movie might be indeed
interesting,
a psychopath killer.
Yeah. I didn't think of American Psycho watching this, but I guess I could see it.
I didn't really think of it too much. I mean, if I guess in the sense that it follows a person who clearly has some psychopathy and like, whatever. Maybe, but like
there are themes relating to class in both those movies, but I feel like the setting, just in versus America in the 80s versus England in the 2000s, and it's just such a different setting. And also the Psycho in American Psycho is the wealthy person, really. Whereas this time it's a middle-class person trying to take that wealth and power for himself.
Yeah.
So it's different. I've always heard like Talented Mr. Ripley,
of course,
and then like Purple Noon and Teorema, the Pasolini movie. I think those are more of which I've actually seen none of those movies. So maybe that could be part of the reason that I liked this.
Yeah.
Because the ones that influenced it, I just haven't seen yet.
Yeah, the Talented Mr. Ripley is, I think, like the most called out comparison here, and I haven't seen that either. But from my understanding, it sounds pretty similar.
Yeah, right. But yeah, when I watched this the first time, I had no idea. So I think I was just along for the ride, and I really had no idea where it was going. And it was very enjoyable in that context. And I think on a rewatch, it was still very enjoyable, and it just added a new subtext to the early scenes where now you know what the truth is and why characters are acting certain ways.
Yeah. So, I mean, with that being said, so we start the movie with Oliver Quick. He's starting his first year at Oxford, and he's kind of a little, he becomes an outcast, I guess, a little bit. He's on scholarship, and people make fun of him for that. He becomes friends with like one kid that's kind of maybe the outcast at the school, and yeah, so and then he ends up kind of just being an outcast for a little bit until he finds Felix on the side of the road. His bike is broken down, so he offers him to take his bike to school, and I think Oliver was like, yeah, I'll just walk yours back or something. I forget I forget why this made any sense, but he offers him to take his bike, and that's their interaction. That's their first meeting, and then he goes to the bar, and Oliver goes to the bar. Felix is there with a bunch of friends and invites Oliver over, and that's kind of where this friendship starts. Yep. Do you remember why the bike thing made sense for him to offer the bike? I don't remember.
Well, I mean, it's all set up from the beginning.
Yeah.
But I think Felix was just in a rush.
Oh, okay.
And Oliver just offers him the bike so he can get to class on time.
Oliver's like, I don't have anything to do. I'll walk it.
Yeah, maybe Oliver is going back to his room, and at least that's what he tells him.
Yeah, right, of course.
But yeah, I mean, they're at the bar, and Oliver acts like he doesn't have money to pay, and then Felix ends up offering to pay. So Felix is a very cool guy.
I love Felix. Watching this movie and knowing what was going to happen, but not entirely knowing how that would happen or play out. I did think that Felix and Oliver were actually friends at the beginning of this. And I thought that like something just shifted later on. Obviously you learn later that it's not exactly like that, but Felix is just such a homie. Felix, right when Oliver gives him the bike, Felix says, I love you to Oliver, and calls him Ollie. And like, he's just like a lovable guy. He's like charismatic. That's the word. Very, very enjoyable to be around, presumably. And then, yeah, he sees that Oliver is like struggling to pay. And so he just goes up and he's like, oh, you dropped this. And he doesn't make a big deal about it. And that's it. It's what a great friend.
Yeah, 100%. He doesn't feel like he needs to take credit. And yeah. And we see their friendship grow, and it seems very genuine, and like they're very good friends. Obviously, it's not on Ollie's side of it, but Felix is being completely genuine and just befriending a random guy who he thinks is just a nice kid who he doesn't really care that he comes from a different background. He just is friends with him. Yeah.
But then there's this scene where they're at Felix's dorm, I guess, and they're just hanging out. But then Oliver like starts cleaning up and is like, "You rich people you're the only people that are allowed to live in a mess," or something. Yeah, it's like cleaning up, and Felix is getting frustrated, and then they kind of have this like turmoil built up for a bit here, and they stop talking for a bit, it seems, until Oliver gets a call from his mom and shows up at Felix's door crying and tells Felix that his dad passed away. This whole bit here, so and then Oliver refuses to leave and not take exams. He finishes his exams. They celebrate at the end, and Felix, again, what a great friend, shows Oliver this tradition that they do at his family, where they take a stone, they write the person's name that passed away, and they throw it into the water, right? So they try to do that, but Oliver's stone that says dad on it lands not in water.
Yeah, just on the bank next to like trash.
Which, watching that, I was like, that sucks.
Yeah.
But we kind of learned that actually his dad's not actually dead.
Exactly.
But this whole bit here, all the way up to here, and then he gets invited to Saltburn. But all the way up to this is about 40-ish minutes of the movie where you're just learning the characters, everything.
Yeah.
And
so I wrote that 30 minutes in is when Felix invites Ollie to Saltburn for the summer.
This whole bit I felt like could have been if they stretched some stuff out and they played a little bit more of the relationships and friendships, and maybe had a little more drama with Farley in the beginning here.
Yeah.
Who we see some drama with like the professor stuff and a little bit more, but
he's kind of a douche.
Yeah, he says at one point like something about his rented tuxedo when everyone's celebrating. Like, what an asshole.
Yeah, he's like, it's rented. He's like, oh, the sleeves are too long and all that. Yeah.
But I think this whole this 30 minutes could have been stretched out into like just a like college drama movie.
100%, yeah.
Because there's like the when they get into that argument about cleaning the room, and like obviously there's some class drama there, which is the more underlying issue I think that gets brought up. But that's like the beginning of Act 3 conflict in the drama, right? And then Act 3 is them reconciling, and his dad's dead, and he helps him cope with that and everything.
Yeah.
Not that I know if that would be a particularly good movie.
It could be. It could be. I mean, this part of the movie, I think it has this part of the movie and all the party scenes really throughout have a very like nostalgic vibe.
Yeah.
It's clearly, this is set like when Emerald Fennell was in high school, and I think she went to Oxford.
She did.
Yeah.
It's around.
So it's very much has that nostalgic feeling. The soundtrack is great. A lot of like pop songs from that era. And yeah, I think it's just kind of an enjoyable time. I will also say, I wrote here that the puke is realistic and disgusting.
Puke.
There's just a random shot of like puke like on a sink or something. There's like there's like shots of puke throughout the movie.
Yeah,
because it like after a party.
Yeah,
and I think it does show like sort of that reality behind the party, but like during the party scenes, it's very fun and enjoyable.
And actually, one of the puke scenes is when Oliver hooks up with Felix's girlfriend, I guess.
Yeah.
Felix is kind of... Yeah. And
they're like making out, and she kind of, I think, is trying to use him to make Felix jealous, maybe. Yeah.
But also watching with knowing a little bit at the end.
Yes.
Knowing that he is a psychopath is all I really knew. It's like, this is kind of the first hint of that, maybe, where he doesn't really care that he's gonna... Not that anyone that does this is a psychopath, I guess, but like, he doesn't really care that he's potentially hurting a relationship of his best friend. Right.
Maybe maybe this is too calculating. Maybe because so that is before the room, right?
Yes.
So maybe
after the room, he sees them. He goes to the bar. He sees Felix there with his friends at the bar, but he wasn't invited.
Right.
So he knows that there's some conflict.
Yeah.
So then when he gets back, that girl is there waiting for Felix, and
so maybe he's just... I don't know how much...
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know if I would consider him a psychopath.
Not for that. For that part, or in general?
Almost just in general. I don't think he's a psychopath. Maybe a sociopath, because sociopaths are more like they are charming and blend into society, right? I think psychopaths just don't have emotions. But ultimately, like, the final shot kind of shows that he does have emotions. And he does have wants and desires, but he's willing to do anything to get it. Yeah. And I think, whatever, we'll get into that later. Yeah. But
he doesn't have empathy. I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, or at least doesn't have empathy for the people he murders.
Yeah.
Yeah. But maybe part of that is out of disdain for them. Mm-hmm. But he says he has like a weird obsession with Felix. Like at the beginning, the very first lines of the movie it's like him smoking a cigarette, and it's like, I wasn't in love with him, but I loved him. Mm-hmm. And like, it seems like he wants to be Felix, really. Yeah. Right? Like, and he would do anything to do that.
And he kind of does.
Well, he does, yeah.
But, yeah, totally.
So, yeah, I mean, that scene with the stone, the first time around, it's a very sweet scene. And then this second time around, it's just like, just sad that Felix is being manipulated and taken advantage of, really.
Yeah, and for such like a wholesome, like, and like intimate thing, like this is a tradition that his family does about loved ones that pass away, right? Like this is an intimate thing that he's sharing, and like, you know, skipping ahead, no wonder why he gets so upset when he realizes that he was lied to, right? Yeah. I mean, who wouldn't be? Yeah, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
So they get to Saltburn. I think that's kind of the next thing.
There's a really cool like tracking shot through the whole place. Also, this movie is 1.37 by 1 aspect ratio. Mm-hmm. And I think this is, part of that does, if it's maybe has a nostalgic feeling in the scenes at Oxford, but when you're at Saltburn, it has these high ceilings, and I think the aspect ratio works to show you the geography of the house without, I don't know. I just think it works because it's kind of a tall aspect ratio in a way. Yeah. And it's just tall, high ceilings and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it kind of emphasizes the excess, right?
Yeah,
the size excess.
Just the height of everything. I feel like the tall ceilings almost like played, and it's very good for close-ups. Yeah. Like there's a lot of close-ups of Jacob Elordi. We can get into it later, but he's shot in this movie almost the way like a hot woman would be shot in a traditional movie directed by a man, but obviously this is directed by a woman, and he's shot almost like he's a model in a commercial sometimes. You know, it's close-ups of his face and stuff. Yeah. So I think that this tracking shot through the mansion or whatever, the estate, it just shows you all the luxury, how rich they really are. And then Felix is telling him like, oh, this was Henry VII's cabinet, this was Henry VIII's bed, there's probably still cum on the sheets.
Yeah.
I accidentally fingered my cousin over there, like just vulgar stuff.
Yeah.
But within this elite setting, it's a big contrast, which is definitely throughout the movie.
Yeah. And I remember that scene. It's like these, you know, the camera is just pushing through each doorway, and it feels like, yeah, it feels like he's giving you the tour, right? And
Yeah.
I loved that scene. I made a note of that one. The push through shots really emphasize just how gorgeous the house is too, because you're being introduced to everything, you know, stuff that you don't normally like. I'm never gonna remember that the staircase was red if you're just watching the movie, but when you're introduced to it as this is the red staircase, then you move on, right?
And I just realized it comes back for the last shot of the movie. Right? This shot of Jacob Elordi, Felix, is showing you through the house. Now the last shot of the movie, now Ollie is showing you through the house.
That's right.
Right?
He does. He fully becomes.
He becomes Felix, yeah. And
naked and full.
Naked, dong out and everything.
Yeah. Speaking of, if you usually watch us on YouTube, you notice that we're not on video this episode.
Yes.
It's because we decided to go dong out.
No, we did not do that. All right, we needed video for this episode specifically. We did not go Barry Keoghan for this episode. We're fully clothed. I'm not Barry Keoghan. I will say, what a last shot of the movie. One of the most audacious final shots. Jesus.
I think this gets back to what, I mean, this is maybe the audacity that you were mentioning with like watching this in theaters and this is like 2023. This is like, again, like, and like the whole movie is like shot gorgeous and the house is gorgeous. Saltburn is like this impressive estate, and Oxford itself is an impressive place, right? But then you see, like, just to skip ahead a little bit, Oliver fucks a grave.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's
you see the dong too. Yeah, you see that.
Yeah. Well, but also I feel like this whole movie is taking this like high class literally royal setting, and it puts these people from the 2000s in there, and they are wealthy, but like this next scene right after the one we were just talking about, they're watching Superbad.
Yeah.
Like they don't even know where Liverpool is.
Yeah.
They are high class, they know things about culture, but ultimately they're kind of idiots, and they have these gaudy parties with glow sticks and like just this like 2000s party culture in this royal setting is just so out of place.
Yeah.
And it sort of works with the vulgarity of like some of the dialogue or some of the scenes, just like contrasting that, I think is interesting. An interesting way of looking at like this British royalty and aristocracy.
Totally. And also while they're watching Superbad, Oliver is like approaching the room and hears them talking about his family and his parents, which at first sounds like watching that and not knowing, like, again, I knew some parts of the movie, but I didn't know that his parents were alive and well. I was like, damn, that's fucked up. He's overhearing this. That's like traumatizing, you know, like, and like to feel like that much of an outcast when you're visiting this place, and to feel like people are looking down on you like that. But in hindsight, like, how do you think he actually felt there? Because do you think that he felt good because it's working? Like, they're feeling bad for him, which is what he wanted.
Yeah, true. Probably. Honestly, it probably fuels his disdain for this family, perhaps, and maybe makes him like, yeah, I'll just fucking kill these people. Like, I'll take what they have any way possible. Maybe.
Yeah. Do you think he already had that mindset going to Saltburn? These are interesting questions I was thinking of like, when did his plan become a plan?
Right. When does he plan to kill everyone in this family and take everything? Because it is a long-term plan. I don't
17 years or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think in a way he would have been happy to be like a Farley type of hanger-on.
Leech.
Yes, just a leech, and just get into this high society. I don't know that he had everything planned out throughout, but I think he just wanted to infiltrate this upper society.
I think you're right, because I think that the decision to kill kind of becomes a necessity, and we're not quite there yet, I guess, in the story, but...
Yeah, no, but I think that's how it goes, and I think he likes the pomp and circumstance, the big living the high life. He likes that. That appeals to him. And yeah, it's hard. I want to talk about like the ending, but I'll save it till we get to the themes.
And this movie, when he gets to Saltburn, he kind of quickly fits in with the family. He like chats away with the mom. There's a point where you see him reading through a book on Saltburn that talks about art right after he talks to the dad about the art, and it makes it clear that he's like trying to study up so he can impress them and stuff, and he does, right? And he uses kind of drama from one thing that he overhears or something to impress the mom at one point.
Yeah.
He's quick.
He tells people what they want to hear.
Yeah.
And like early on, he's like has that meeting with Farley and like the principal or whatever, Dean, and he's like, "Oh, the reading list, I read every book." And he's like, "You read every book? The Bible's on there. You spent your summer reading the Bible?" Like, so, but he just tells people what they want to hear so that he seems like and later on, when he sees his parents, they're like, "Oh, he's the valedictorian at Oxford." Like, he's been lying about all. He just lies to anyone to tell them what they want to hear to get what he wants. So he is like definitely a pathological liar.
Yeah.
And manipulator.
Yeah. And there's one point when he's invited out to the field with Venetia, Farley, and Felix. And he goes out to the field and he has his bathing suit on, and they're like, "No trunks allowed in the field." And so he drops his trunk, and Farley says something like, "Wow, good for you."
Yeah.
And then he looks over and goes, "What a twist."
Yeah. But also, this is Felix, his sister, and his cousin.
Yeah.
And they're hanging out naked in a field?
Weird.
Why?
High life, man.
It's up with
high society.
That was one of the weirdest. Might have been weirder than the scene that comes after it. Which is fucking weird.
Yep.
Also, there was one scene I wanted to mention before.
Yeah, sorry.
Elspeth, they're at like dinner, and she's like passive aggressively wants Pamela to move out.
Yes.
Also, poor old Pamela. Literally, she's credited as poor dear Pamela, played by Carey Mulligan. Great actress in just a little side part, and very funny character.
Yeah.
It's just hilarious the way they're both saying the opposite of what they want. Like, Pamela wants to stay, but she's like, "Oh, I can move out if you want me to." And then Elspeth wants her to get the hell out, but she's like, "Oh, no, stay." Well, but clearly they're both being passive aggressive, and just I think the dialogue is very funny, and in the ways these upper class people are so passive aggressive to the people around them, and gossipy and all this. But
yeah,
it's very well done.
Yeah, totally. And this is kind of part of why I think that Oliver really bonds with, or at least, what's her name? Elspeth. Feels like Oliver bonds with her pretty well, is because she clearly kind of is into that drama, right? Like, she is talking about Pamela and wanting her to leave later on, even after she had just said at dinner, no, you should stay as long as you want, right? Or whatever. And so later on, we see Oliver a few times, I think, at least twice, talking to Elspeth specifically and gossiping, and it like really clicks with her, right? Because that's, she loves doing that. She loves gossiping and saying one thing and then saying another somewhere else, maybe.
Yeah, and like I said, he tells people what they want to hear. Yep. He's like, "Okay, she likes to gossip, I'm going to gossip."
Exactly.
This guy likes art, I'm going to talk about this fucking vase with him, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think right after that weird scene in the field, there's a montage to like an MGMT song, which is fun. And then like Felix is jerking off in the tub. Yep. I think that's the next scene.
Yes.
Felix jerks off in the tub, and then
we gotta stop watching movies that involve masturbation.
Yeah, that's the third movie?
It might be the third.
Fourth.
Adaptation, Lighthouse. Yep.
This.
That might be.
And is there any others? I'm not sure. That is.
I'm hoping that's
not good. That's sort of a recurring theme. We could imagine the guy in Perfect Blue, the stalker. We don't see it, but he must have been. So there you go. There's another you could add.
No.
Implied.
Nope. 3 is enough.
I mean, come on. When H.I. from Raising Arizona, when he's in jail, what do you think he's doing? Come on. All these movies are just secretly about jerking off. Anyway.
But then, this movie takes it a step further, because we see Felix doing that, and then, like, Felix finishes getting ready for the day and leaves, but Oliver was watching him do that. And then, once Felix leaves, the water is draining from the tub, and Oliver gets right on in there, and
he slurps the drain. He licks the drain of the bathtub.
Yeah.
It's disgusting. Iconic though. It became a cultural moment.
And the water is shown kind of murky.
Yeah.
It's like, you know that there's
stuff in there at some point.
Yeah.
But it was just soapy water.
Felix was masturbating in that water.
Well, it's probably 1 to 1,000 to water ratio.
That's true.
Right? I mean, come on.
But still, it was weird.
Oh, yeah. 100% it's weird and disgusting. I'm just trying to rationalize this to myself. I mean, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, how'd you feel about that scene?
Weird.
Okay.
I didn't like that.
I agree. Yeah, that's a weird thing to do. But that...
I thought it was a normal thing to do. I just don't.
What does this say about it? Is this part of Oliver like wanting to be Felix? Does Oliver want to fuck Felix? Does he want to like? Does he?
It's
want
funny
to
because
have sex with him also.
Felix is really the only of the. So later on, Oliver ends up seducing both Venetia and Farley in a way.
Yep.
And Felix is the one that he doesn't do that with.
And even the mom, Elspeth, he flirts with her.
Yeah, and I think that he does love Felix, right? Like, and I think that he feels more strongly for Felix than any of the others, and so he doesn't want to use that as a way to manipulate him, right? That's my thought, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that could be.
But I think he does want to. I just don't think that he wants to as a manipulation, right? Like, he doesn't want to do it just for doing it.
So maybe early on, maybe his motivation for all that stuff at the beginning is just to be close to Felix.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of taking over comes to him later, perhaps?
Yeah. Maybe like once he realizes that he can't be with him because he realizes Felix knows, right? They go to the family house. Felix figures out that he was lying.
Yeah.
And then he's like, well, shit's over. I got to kill him and then I'll take his place.
Yeah,
It's like, if I can't fuck him, I'll be him.
Yeah. That's a good point, actually. I think maybe that is probably the turning point.
That could be it.
Where everything changes.
So after though, he slurps up that back.
Oh, God. Yeah, he does that. He slurps up the bathwater. And then after that, there's a scene of him flirting with Elspeth.
Yes.
And he I think Pamela has left by this point, or she's about to leave. And he like talks about how Pamela does all these bad things, turns Elspeth against her, and Elspeth says, "Oh, thank goodness for you, Oliver. You're so perceptive."
Yeah, and he calls her beautiful.
Yeah, he calls her beautiful. Yeah, he's like flirting with her, telling her what she wants to hear, and he is very perceptive.
Oh yeah,
understanding people's psychology and how he can manipulate them.
Yeah.
And then there's another scene of disgustingness, perhaps. I think after this scene with Elspeth, it's nighttime, and he goes out and he performs an act on Venetia in the field on a bench outside. He eats her out on her period. Farley sees it, and then there's a shot of Ollie like in like a bath or something, and there's blood coming down. It kind of looks like a vampire.
Yeah,
I felt like that was intentional. And
yeah, because he's like a leech, right? He's like blood sucking. He's like draining these people, and yeah.
So that happens.
That's interesting. The vampire. I noticed that too. I was like, this kind of looks like a vampire. But I was like, he even says it actually. He says, oh man, he's so weird. She's like, it's not that time of month. And he says, lucky for you, I'm a vampire or something. Some terrible line.
Yeah. And
proceeds to do, yeah. And and then when he's watching, yeah, it does look like that. And I was wondering why that symbolism was there. And yeah, he really is kind of like, it's like this gothic setting, right? And he's like leeching off of these people, and I don't know how much more there really is to that, but it is like a gothic setting too, right? Which is
and I think vampires have often been like used in relation to rich people, and how rich people can leech and suck the blood of the people around them and stuff like that, right? Mm-hmm. There's often vampires have to do with class also. Yeah. Right?
Does Dracula like does a vampire like take over for a person or no? No.
They just kill people, or they can turn people into vampires.
Right.
But maybe that's I don't know. Maybe that's almost like what he wanted out of Felix. He wanted to be turned into one of the upper class.
Yeah.
And he ends up having to do it by killing in the end.
Yeah.
But also this scene, maybe it's not as disgusting as others, but this movie has a lot of focus on like bodily fluids.
Yeah.
A lot. There's puke, there's menstruation, there's ejaculation. I don't know that we necessarily see the ejaculation like liquids. We don't we don't specifically see it. But I don't know. This movie really does not I think it likes to be kind of gross and like to shock the audience with those kind of things. Because those are definitely taboo.
Right. I think that's the thing is there's some shock factor there, right? Yeah. Coming back to like fucking the grave later on.
Yeah.
Like, what is the meaning of him doing this while she's on her period? Is there like a deeper meaning there, or is it just for the shock factor? Those were things that I was like trying to think of during this and couldn't come up with like good answers.
Yeah.
Like, it's just audacious and
yeah, it's just meant to shock the audience, I think. I think that is a factor. And maybe some people don't appreciate that, but it has the effect. It works.
It is shocking.
There's some shocking scenes in this movie, for sure. But yeah, after this, there's sort of more tension because Farley knows it. There's all the little drama going on. But also there's like kind of a fun, sweaty summer vibe. It's like everyone's by the pool, the sun's out, they're hanging out. I think there are a lot of scenes and montages that are just supposed to be the appealing aspects of this lifestyle.
Yeah.
And you're able to see why it's so appealing to someone and why this crazy guy is willing to kill for it, I guess.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that does play into the whole themes of the movie, I think.
Agreed.
But yeah, so we see they have a party with isn't it like a bunch of people named Tom? They're all named Tom or
Henry.
Henry.
Because it's the same as the king.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
King Henry, who there might still be some cum on that bed.
Yes. Yeah, so I was like, is Felix's family the Cattons? I guess that's what they're called. Are they like direct descendants of like Henry VIII and all that? Or are they like cousins of that? Are they somehow related to British royalty?
Yeah, is that why they have all these friends named Henry?
It must be, right? Because they have like heirlooms. They have like Henry VII's cabinet and Henry VIII's bed. Yeah,
and also it makes sense that they just kind of come from money because it doesn't really sound at all at many points like they're like, I don't remember the term. Is it like new wealth is...
Their old money.
Their old money, right. They don't make their money.
No, they've just had it in their family, and then now they have all this art and they have all this wealth that they can just invest, and they're like, oh, I just pay some guy and he does our investments.
Right.
And I don't do anything. We just have a bunch of money. And it makes money for itself by investing, and they probably own property or no.
They don't even know where Liverpool is.
Yeah, they don't know shit. But they're kind of fucking idiots in ways.
So I think... Yeah, I could totally see that they're like descendants from...
They have paintings of Richard III, Henry VII, and Henry VIII.
Yeah.
Because at that party, they're doing karaoke.
Right.
They end up, Farley and Oliver talk about it.
Yeah, why would you have paintings in the bed of this king if you weren't like descendants, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they have a party. There's a guy singing Low by Flo Rida, which is very funny. I enjoyed.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know if I'm missing anything that you wanted to go back to, but there's Farley sets up Oliver to sing Rent by the Pet Shop Boys, and Oliver does not appreciate it, and then he says, oh, this is your song too, Farley, and Farley ends up being all charismatic and playing along with it, but that definitely came into play.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that I think Farley is concerned about Oliver taking his place.
Yeah.
Because Farley is like, I've got it really good right now. I'm taking what I can. I'm living the high life. And he doesn't want someone to take his place as like the number one hanger-on.
Yeah.
So he sort of embarrasses him at this scene.
Yeah. And
then I think right after that, or that night, Oliver sets up Farley for he sends like an email about the, I don't know, plates or some sort of
selling something
to Sotheby's, and they're like, little did he know, my cousin runs Sotheby's or whatever. Yeah. So also Richard E. Grant is in this as the dad, and he's great.
Yeah.
He's very funny, just a great actor.
Yeah. The dinner scene later on, or not dinner, lunch, I guess. was particularly well for him, I thought.
Like like after Felix dies.
Yeah.
That's a fucked up scene.
Yeah. But so I think it's like right after the party that Felix surprises Oliver with a trip. Is there anything I'm missing before that?
No, not really. There's that part where they're talking about how Pamela died, and Elspeth is like, "Oh, she'd do anything for attention."
Oh man,
which is it's like funny, but it's darkly funny. It's obviously a completely fucked up thing to say.
Yeah,
but that's how callous they are, really.
Yeah, which is interesting because, there's this idea that like Oliver lacks at least empathy for these people, but she's kind of showing that she kind of lacks. In a way, her and him are very similar. They do the gossipy drama stuff together. Yeah. They both like manipulate, right? Like with the Pamela stuff. Yeah, they both kind of lack that empathy for certain people, or
100%. Yeah, and yeah, I think that plays into themes later on as well, which I keep on saying, but I have a whole theory about this movie and why some people don't like it and why I think it holds up.
Also, real quick about Elspeth, she also just like directly says that she doesn't like ugly people. She's a very shallow person.
She does. Oh, goodness gracious.
she's a very shallow person. She even makes like all the men like shave every day. They can't have any stubble or anything. Yeah. But
also she has like our quote from the beginning. She has their like, "Oh, I was a lesbian once, but now she likes men more." So it's like, I don't know. This movie does have a weird relationship with sexuality, of people being like having very fluid sexualities, but sort of never mentioning it, or it's always like swept under the rug, like kept on, never mentioned, like explicitly. I guess she does mention it explicitly, but I don't have any theory about that. It was just something I noticed.
Yeah.
But yeah, Felix brings Ollie to his house and he realizes Oliver's been fucking lying about everything. His parents are alive. He's been lying to his parents about being a valedictorian. He has 2 sisters. He's all this stuff. And Felix is clearly pissed. But frankly, this is when Felix should have left his parents' house.
Called it a day.
The reason he brings him back is because they have a birthday party planned for him that night. That night. So they have to get back for the birthday party. But in retrospect, I was like, Felix, just leave this guy. You would have saved yourself.
Yeah. And this part was like really like, this is just another one of those moments though when Felix is surprising him that you're like, wow, Felix is such a good friend that like he really wants to help like rebuild Oliver's relationship, and he's always seeing the best, right? He pulls up to the house and he says, she's really cleaning up her act, like this place is great. And the whole time it just seems like you gotta feel bad for this guy. He might be a little dumb and a little like a little obviously in that like socialite lifestyle or whatever, but he's awesome. He's like,
and that's part of the movie. I do think there is that aspect of, I don't know, he is supposed to be like an appealing character that appeals to the audience. Maybe that is having a female director and writer and having that aspect where normally this would be like a female character that is so like alluring to the audience if it was made by a man, but it's kind of cool to see it flipped on its head and roles reversed a little bit. And so Felix realizes that Oliver has been lying a lot about everything, his entire life. And it turns out that also his parents are like super supportive. They're like everything that they're saying is like, and the mom, he's like, oh, I have a migraine. And the mom's like, oh, well, we don't want you to be like, we don't want you to be hurting or anything. And the dad's kind of like, well, we already made lunch or whatever. And the mom's like, but if he needs to lay down, let him lay down or whatever. And it's just like the family seems sweet and cute. And that is an interesting thing though. If he is this sort of sociopathic person, like his upbringing really can't prevent that, right? And that's the reality for some like serial killers and stuff, where they can't have normal upbringings and not necessarily like, sometimes it is just people are born and their brains are fucked up or whatever, and they are lacking empathy and they can do horrific things.
And I think that even in his you get a little bit of hints at his background, and they say things like, he was never like his sisters and he always wanted to play alone and stuff. And it seems like he had the position to be like a very I don't want to say like normal, but whatever, person, right? And he like isolates himself, and then when he gets to school, he's clearly an excuse me. He's clearly an outcast right away, and it seems like that's kind of like it's kind of built up from his childhood, right? Like maybe he was always the outcast, right? He always like isolated himself and was kind of the outcast, and that's kind of maybe what builds up this resentment for like the popular people and all that, or resentment / jealousy to like want to be them. And it's just interesting because it seems like there's these small hints at his childhood, and it feels like you can kind of piece together more about his background from that, which is cool.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I mean, it's a fucked up scene, I guess, with revealing all these things are lies. Obviously, the audience also doesn't know this.
Yeah, this is when you're learning.
This is when the audience learns that, oh my god, he's been lying about everything.
Yeah, he like freaks out in the car, and you're kind of like, what?
Yeah, right.
And they pull up to the nice house, and you're like, And then the dad's at the garden, and it's like,
yep. So yeah, I mean, they go back. They end up going back, and they have the party, and that's. I mean, I don't know if there's anything. They sing "Happy Birthday." No one knows who Oliver is.
Yeah, he's really happy when everyone's around him singing, and then when everyone forgets his name, he drops to like a dead face.
Yeah,
and it makes it very clear that he does thrive on that attention. He wants that attention, but then he realizes it's not real, right?
Yeah. Yep. And then he fucking kills Felix. Felix is having sex with a lady in the center of the maze, and he interrupts, and Felix is like, fuck you, Oliver, and he's like being a complete freak, and he gives him a bottle that's poisoned, and Felix only takes one sip, I think, one gulp of the bottle, and then he dies, and the next morning they wake up, everyone's freaking out, and they find Felix's dead body, and the family's really in denial. They try to have this lunch, which is this very, I don't know, very sad scene, I guess, of them kind of in denial, not knowing what to do.
Yeah. And there's a couple of really great shots at this point. There's one shot where you see the maze, and first of all, the maze is really cool. In the center, there's the Minotaur statue, and then it sprawls out all the way. But in the center, there's like the fact that Felix dies in the center of this maze is kind of like the fact that he's the center of all of Oliver's plans and all that stuff, it feels. And, there's the maze has so many different outlets, and each one of them might lead out, but they might not. And it's kind of like his plans. He might have a bunch of ideas, but he has to find the way to get what he wants at the end, right?
Right, yeah.
And then there's one really cool shot when everyone's waking up and everyone's searching for Felix, and Oliver has this like it looks like Roman royalty like robe draped over. You still see his shoulders, but it's like draped over, it's red, and he's at the balcony and he's looking down on everyone searching, and there's this it's this old high class castle, right, with beer cans and red Solo cups all over the yard, and everyone's like frantically looking around, and he's just looking over everyone, and I think that's like really where he wants to be, right? He wants to be above and like looking down on these people that he maybe has felt looked down on by before. And so that shot felt very like, ooh, I like that one.
Yeah, and there's a shot of like Felix, it's sort of the camera's on the ground, and Felix you can see, I think he had wings on, like his costume, so you can see the wings kind of, and his family all comes around, they see his body, they're all like grieving, and then like Oliver like stumbles in and he kind of just like interrupts everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this whole scene is very, it's very sad, honestly, just seeing no one knows how to react, which I think is a true scenario, like true to what would happen. Like, how do you act? What do you do? I don't know. But they have this lifestyle. They just kind of want to, maybe this is just how they always have been, where they have their routine and what they do, and nothing interrupts it. Even the most traumatic thing possible. It's like, this is how we act, this is what we do, and they try to just keep things normal, but obviously you can't. I mean, they close the blinds and everything's red, right? And everyone's freaking out.
And of course, the cops can't find Felix in the maze, which, thinking of the maze as like Oliver's plan, again, the cops are never going to catch him, right? They can't get to the center. They can't figure out his plan.
Yeah.
But so someone has to like guide them to the body through the maze.
Yeah.
And it's very like very sad. And then they close the curtains and the whole room turns red. And they struggle to close the curtains.
Yeah. And those little like the little details of those kind of things are like those awkward, realistic things that happen in like a traumatic scenario that is just weird. I don't even know how to describe it.
And not often portrayed in cinema.
Exactly.
Usually the traumatic thing happens and it's like it's kind of smooth, if not sad, right? But like the process of that grief is smooth.
Yeah.
Maybe not smooth, I don't know, but you don't see those awkward small moments.
Yes, exactly. You don't hear the moment of, hey, the butler being like, hey, can I send out a gardener because they can't get through the maze?
Yeah.
Like they wouldn't, normally that is just overlooked and it's just the emotion is part of it, but the little kinks of everything keep reminding them of the reality because they want to just block it out.
Yeah.
But they keep having things that remind them of it all. So yeah, this is a very poignant scene. Like you said, Richard E. Grant is great in this scene.
Yeah, all the acting in this scene felt like even Farley like is trying to leave and starts crying when he's getting yelled at and
Richard E. Grant's like, eat the fucking pie.
Yeah. And Venetia is just pouring wine and the glass is way overflown and it's just seeping onto the table. Also, once the blinds are finally closed, you hear the wheelbarrow that they're presumably carrying the body in.
The gurney,
the gurney. You hear the wheels squeaking outside, and it's like even closing the blinds, and everyone knows what's happening. They're just trying to ignore it. Right?
Yeah. But then Oliver blames Farley for having cocaine at the party and gets Farley kicked out.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of forgot that he came back. Oh yeah, he came back during the party or something. It was like.
Yeah, because there was the stealing aspect, and then he comes back and he's like, "Oh, like I'm family, like you can't get rid of me that easily."
Yeah.
And I wrote that they're in competition to suckle off the aristocracy.
Yeah,
because that's really what it is. It's like, oh, you can't get rid of me that easily. Like this is my family. But yeah, then he gets him kicked out for good by saying that he had cocaine and implying that that's why Felix died.
Right. And then they have the funeral.
Yeah.
He does not get invited to throw the stone. They say, we'll meet you at home. Richard E. Grant says, we'll meet you at home. And Oliver watches from like the woods, watches them throw the stone into the water. And it turns out he collects that stone, but you don't get to see that, I guess. And so it's Venetia and the parents and what's his name is holding the two umbrellas. He's in the middle. He's just getting soaked and holding the two umbrellas. And then they get home. I think Oliver fucks the grave here.
He does.
Yeah.
It's almost 3 minutes long, one shot. He like pulls his pants down, he fucks the grave.
Yep.
Seeing this in the theater, literally, this is the scene where my jaw dropped. I was like, I can't believe what I'm seeing in just a multiplex theater.
Crazy.
This is insane. So yeah.
It was pretty wild.
Very shocking. Yeah, it does show his obsession with Felix and his, I don't know, it's a weird sexual obsession, but he also wants to be him. He wants to fuck him. I don't know.
Yeah. And at some point in the mix, I think it's actually before the funeral, but the mom like pleads with Oliver not to leave. And that's an important note in what's going to come up because Oliver, after he fucks the grave, gets home casually.
Yeah.
And he argues with Venetia. She's in the tub. And then the next day, she's apparently slit her wrist in the tub.
Yeah.
Conveniently.
Yeah.
And
that scene in the tub, Venetia, played by Allison Oliver, she like calls him out, calls him a moth.
Yeah.
It's a really great performance in the bath. And then like they like kind of make out. It's like the way sexuality and like sexual tension like plays into everything in this movie is like interesting. I don't know that it all always makes sense, or I couldn't like explain like why this works or whatnot, but it's just sort of an interesting aspect of the movie. But yeah, that's a really great scene where Venetia, like Allison Oliver, like this is probably her biggest like scene where her acting can shine.
Yeah, because even at the lunch, when I think most, other than Oliver and Felix, I think that most of the actors have their best scene at that lunch. I think Elspeth, James, Farley, I think that's like a really emotional scene. But Venetia really doesn't say much at that scene. She just pours the wine and at lunch I don't think she says a whole lot. But then here she gets all of her feelings out.
Yeah, also I'm realizing at one point, when does he give Farley the hand job?
Yeah,
That happens at one
that was
point.
before he gets him kicked out the first time.
Yes, we must have just skipped over this.
Yeah.
No, anyway, he does.
Yeah, I forget. That was, oh yeah, after they did the singing at the party. It was after the party that.
Because Farley is like, fuck Chuck or Mary, Henry
Yeah.
III.
He's
Wait, Richard III, Henry VII, Henry VIII.
Why you fuck me?
Yeah,
Something
exactly.
like
That's what he says. And then he like gives him a hand job, I guess, that night or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, he does it because then he has access to his phone,
Right.
and then he gets him kicked out. All right. Anyway, that was just the other maybe surprising scene. I think the sexuality in this movie is very fluid, and that's the first time where there's a explicitly like homosexual scene in the movie. But there is obviously that implication with him and his obsession with Felix. There's like there's a gay aspect to it. It's not a normal, I don't know. There's a sexual aspect to his obsession with Felix.
Yeah, definitely.
Is the point.
The bathwater.
Jesus. Yeah, I guess that counts. Yeah, whatever.
But
that could be him being a fucking freak.
Yeah. And then,
he kills
so Venetia dies.
Yeah, he kills her.
And then he is invited to toss the stone this time. So that's an important distinction here. So he's kind of...
Right, he's getting in.
He's getting closer and closer. Again, Duncan is holding the two umbrellas, getting soaked on. One umbrella is now covering Oliver instead of their actual kids because they're both dead. And one's covering the parents. And then sometime later, it's not clear if it's right away, but James offers Oliver money to leave Saltburn and says, we need to grieve. And it's, clearly Elspeth thinks she needs you, but we need to move on. And you're kind of a lingering aspect of our kids. Right?
Yeah.
Very emotional scene. Kind of a subtly emotional because it doesn't really feel emotional, but then...
Yeah. No, Richard D. Grant is really good in the scene too, because you can see his desperation and he's like, how much money? Yeah. He's like, I don't want to... He's like, how much? Like he just wants this nightmare to be over with, basically.
Yeah.
And then he leaves and it cuts to years later.
Yeah.
Really, right? I mean, we see Oliver and Elspeth are at a coffee shop. And Sir James is...
He's working, of course.
He's
typing away at his computer.
Typing away. And then later on, we see... It's a very funny shot of his computer is just gibberish. He's just been smashing the keyboard. Very funny.
Me at work.
But yeah, and also they meet and Oliver's like, oh, what a coincidence. It's like, oh, this is not a coincidence.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, Elspeth gets him invited back to Saltburn. I don't know if there's any sexual aspect to the relationship. It's not mentioned.
It's not mentioned. It kind of feels like there might be, but I think it's maybe intentionally ambiguous, right? I mean, yeah. It feels like maybe there was, right? But it's never actually explicitly said, and this movie is so upfront with its sexuality that it's like, would they have just shown it if there really was?
Right. But it could have just been they cut it out because this movie's pretty long.
Yep. It's getting... And to be honest, I started feeling it here. Pretty much, once he gets kicked out or bribed to leave Saltburn, there's not a lot left. We maybe have like the last 10, 15 minutes. But
yeah,
I was kind of like, can we finish?
Yeah.
And yeah, so he's there with Elspeth, and she's on her deathbed. It kind of skipped to that.
She gets sick. I don't know if it doesn't fully explain if he's like poisoned her or...
Well, he breathes cigarette smoke while she's on her deathbed. He gets real close to her face and breathes it into her mouth or nose or whatever.
Yeah.
So it seems like maybe he had been just subtly maybe secondhand smoking her up. I don't know.
That can't be.
That was just like a fuck you.
Yeah, I think that's
thing.
all it was.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's kind of implied like he makes her sick somehow.
I think it is
He
implied.
must poison her. He must do something like that.
Yeah.
It must not be just a natural thing.
And this was kind of crazy that he actually just kills her. I mean, he explains everything for some reason. I didn't like this.
No.
I don't get why you feel the need to explain. I think at this point, we've all caught on. The only part that from the explanation, I don't think you would have known, is that he, actually pierced the bike wheel so that way Felix needed the ride, and that's how they became friends, and then also actually had money during the bar scene. But I don't know if those were impactful enough for us to have an explanation that kind of oversaturates. Like, I feel like it felt like the story being, the writing here being like, well, just in case you guys didn't catch on.
Right.
Here you go.
Yeah, I think there's enough information in it that's not explained otherwise that I didn't mind it. Because, like, it shows him putting the poison in the thing and killing, like, without that, it would be unclear, like, did Felix just overdose? Did Venetia kill herself? Or did, like, I think it does make these things explicit, which I didn't mind. I do understand, like, maybe it would have been more interesting, or it just would have been different if it would have been more subtle if it just avoided this and left things up to interpretation, because then it would really be unknown what he did and what he didn't do. Yeah. This really explains that he did everything. Yeah, and maybe the thing is that I would have liked it better if it was more subtle or, like, unexplained. And I think it's okay that it does it this way, and it's necessary, like you said, to be more explicit and upfront. But I don't know if I cared for that explicit explanation. Yeah, that's fair. But I think the reason I didn't mind it that much is because it is new or different information. It's showing previous scenes from a new perspective. Yeah. Whereas sometimes these type of, there's a twist, you have to explain everything. It'll show a flashback of just something we already saw. It'll literally just cut from the beginning of the movie. It'll literally be the same shot from the beginning of someone being like, oh, I did, whatever it is. But it's just repeating things we already saw. I think the reason I didn't mind it is because it's new and from a different perspective. So, I didn't mind it, but I think that's a fair criticism. But that makes sense too. I mean, it feels, it is new stuff at least, which is good. But then, I mean, this is crazy. He just kills Elspeth. He can't just wait a month? Don't know. He pull, and like, what is he gonna do? He's not gonna shove that tube back in her, so when the cops get there, he's like what? No idea. This tube is huge. He rips this giant ass tube out of her throat. Yep. And he just throws it on the ground. When the ambulance gets there, they're gonna be like, what happened? Did you do that? Yeah. That's a good point. Imagine that. Imagine ruining everything at the very end like this. You over-explain yourself at the end, and then you just pull this, you kill her because you can't wait a month. Yeah. And then you get arrested. After all this, you've spent 17 years building up this thing, or however long it was. Yeah, they don't explain how long it's been. Yeah. It seems like it's been many years. I assumed it was like modern day at this point, but so like 2006. Well, I guess it's 2023 when this. Yeah, so 17 years. Yeah. Wow. Whatever. Wow. Yeah. But also, I mean, it's not clear. It could totally be different. But. Yeah, that would be a long time. Interesting. But yeah, basically he kills her and he inherits Saltburn, and final shot of Barry Keoghan dancing to Murder on the Dance Floor, naked, dancing through the halls. Improvised. Oh, improvised? No. Totally. Well, that was. It was just. Yeah. Kind of just. It was really well choreographed though. Like at the doorways when he like really has this like sprawling stance, and when he's like turning and he does the swing turn and you see the dong fling. But it actually is. I feel like it's very intentional that he is in control here, right? He's able to just be totally naked. He's able to fling his dong around like it doesn't even matter. I thought the dancing was great, even if I thought there was a lot of dong for a movie. Yeah, I think it's a great way to end the movie. It's fucking crazy. Again, I mean, it's a crazy way to end the movie. And then it shows that he was collecting those stones at the end too. The stones that you throw in for each person. He actually had like went into the water and collected them. So he puts them on top of this music box as if a way to show like, I own you or whatever. Yes, yeah. I'm gonna dong out in front of your stone. Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. Yeah, good way to end the movie. Yeah. So I would love to hear your theory. Well, so I feel like this movie was kind of advertised like in recent years, there have been a lot of movies also about upper class and about lower class or working class people getting revenge on the upper classes. This is like a common theme, and I think that's what people were looking for going into this. But ultimately, Felix is super rich, and he's the most empathetic character you empathize with the most. I love Felix. Yeah. And so I think people saw this as almost like pro-rich people and anti-poor people. Because the villain in Psychopath is a quote-unquote like working-class person, but really he's not. Really, he's a middle-class person who will do anything to get power and wealth. And I think this shows that in order to get that wealth and that power, you need to have this psychopathic lack of empathy and do anything, kill anyone. Because imagine how their family got the wealth back in the day. They were plundering from colonies. They had slaves. They did like
Take it way back, yeah.
well, yeah, that's where the money comes from.
Yeah, that's right.
It's real. They are descendant from royalty. I mean, that's where the money comes from. And there's a statue in the garden at Saltburn of, it looks like a person like holding like a rock or something and like beating another person to death. And it has that brute strength of just, this is how people get power and wealth, is through like brutality and callous, just lack of empathy for anyone else, and they'll do anything to get it. So I don't think this is like showing like middle class average people as worse than rich people or anything like that. I think it's showing that in order to have this much wealth, you have to have this psychopathic aspect to your personality, willing to do anything to get it and to keep it.
Yeah, and we see Elspeth kind of has a similar personality. It seems at many points that she kind of has that lack of empathy and maybe some psychopathy as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that theory. I think that's great.
That's what I think of the movie's themes are ultimately about. Obviously, also it's kind of just an entertaining, like thrill ride, twisty turny, entertaining movie to watch. But I think it has those themes also, and I think maybe people misinterpret it or maybe have different expectations going in, and so they maybe unfairly say that, oh, this is just like, you know, pro-rich or something like that.
Yeah. I think that one of the things that I noticed, one of the themes that I was thinking of during this movie was along a similar vein, but more about like trust and friendship and whatnot. Like Farley is this cousin and they don't really trust Farley, right? Like they've known Farley forever. And then like twice Oliver is able to get Farley kicked out with very little effort.
Yeah.
But Oliver, and even Venetia mentions this at one point, that Venetia's like, or actually it might have been Farley that mentioned it, but someone's like, you've only known Felix for 6 months. How hard is this really for you to grieve, right?
Yeah.
And for me, like, I kind of forgot that it was only that long. Like, I'm like, oh, yeah, like, really, like, this guy, why does everyone trust him this quickly? It's because he's charismatic in a way. He's like, he plays to what they want to hear. He's very manipulative, but he builds up that trust really quickly. And to me, I think there was some part of this movie that's trying to emphasize that like we should be careful with where we place our trust and how quickly we can place it at certain things. I don't know how, like, that was just one of the things I was trying to pull out of this movie. For the most part, I kind of was like, dong.
A lot of dong. Yeah, that's definitely true. And I think him playing this innocent victim character is part of gaining the trust,
right?
Because everyone underestimates him. They're like, oh, that's poor Oliver, he's from a poor family with his parents are drug addicts, he can't do it. Like, they look down upon him and they underestimate him because he's built this persona. Yeah. And that's probably part of the reason that he has to kill Felix that night, because otherwise his cover is blown and now he's fucked at Oxford. This whole facade will be ruined. Yeah. So yeah, he had using that like victim status to get what he wants, I think makes people underestimate him, and he's able to they end up trusting him, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Well, yeah, I guess is that for Saltburn? I don't know. Yeah. Great way to end a movie. Reminded me of Beau Travail, which is a movie where at the very end there's just a random dance scene with like a pop song at the very end for like no reason, except no dong in no dong. Ooh. Yeah. But it's I think this ending must have been influenced by Beau Travail. Yeah. But yeah, overall, great movie. I forgot to mention, well, how did you watch this one? Sorry, I've said that earlier. I watched this one on Amazon Prime. Cool. I was I don't have Prime, so I was like, I gotta rent it, but it was on sale on Fandango at home or Vudu or whatever you want to call it.
So earlier I said don't buy digital. I bought this on Fandango at home. I know.
Oh my god, typical Elspeth behavior.
Yeah, renting it was $4.99. Buying it was $5.
Okay.
So
yeah, you had to buy it.
I paid the extra.
Yeah, obviously.
and I paid. So the 4K was on sale. So I actually watched this in 4K.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah, we have a 4K TV at home, but I don't have a ton of 4K stuff, so I really haven't watched a lot of 4K yet. So it was cool to watch this in 4K.
Yeah, nice. I was just wanting to look up, like, is this shot on film? It looks...
I actually did look this up. It is shot on 35 millimeter.
Oh, really?
Because I looked it up before I bought the 4K, because I was like, I want to make sure it was actually like shot either on film or in 4K.
Right.
And not just like some... Like, I guess it was $5, doesn't really matter, but like...
You don't want... If it was shot in 2K, you don't want to buy the 4K.
Right, yeah. Right. But it was right. shot in 35 millimeter.
Oh, yeah, okay, interesting. Yeah, it definitely adds... I love the look of the movie, and I think the cinematography and just the aesthetics of it just add to, I don't know, making it just an enjoyable experience to watch. It's interesting throughout.
Yeah, and I like what you said about the aspect ratio. For me, I was thinking the aspect ratio mostly as two things. I was thinking of it as feeling like emphasizing the excess, and also I was kind of stuck on that whole like labyrinth thing. So I was thinking that it was like, you can imagine like trying to leave a labyrinth and you only have so much view, because like think of like a hedge maze or something. You don't actually have your peripheral vision because it's the hedges. And so I was thinking of it like you're the one stuck in a maze. You're like stuck in Oliver's maze trying to leave as you like learn more about this. But I like what you said a lot about the nostalgia aspect, because it's reminiscent. That size is reminiscent of older TVs that I think were probably still pretty popular in 2006.
Yeah.
Flat screens were as common.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
But I forgot the ratio of older TVs before we switched to like 16:9, but it was probably pretty close to the ratio that we saw here. So
yeah, definitely.
And on film helps it be a little nostalgic.
Yeah, and I think it just looks good. The film, the cinematography looks good throughout.
Great movie.
Yeah. What'd you give it?
Let me double check just to make sure.
I know that I gave it 4 stars. I gave it 4 stars originally, and I sticking with it. I think 4 stars is good.
I also gave it 4 stars.
There you go. Also 4 stars.
I remember when I was rating it, I was between 4 and 4.5, but I ended up with 4. I think for me, again, I didn't love the explanation at the ending, and I did start to feel the length a little bit. So 4 felt pretty good.
Nice.
Great movie.
Well, hey, we had some solid psychological thrillers here this week.
Yeah, we did. And two very different types of psychological thrillers. We have kind of the dark animated Perfect Blue.
Yeah.
And in Perfect Blue, you see these like death scenes and you see the gore. In Saltburn, there's really not a lot of blood and gore. There's a lot of, there is kind of a lot of blood, but not usually when people die. More of the blood in this movie is from one scene.
Well, and from her death also.
Yeah, she's the only one really associated with a lot of blood.
Yeah, true.
Interesting. Man, I'm sure there's more you could pull apart this movie with, but
yeah,
these are very different. Like Saltburn doesn't feel quite as, like I was saying earlier, it doesn't really feel as like thriller-esque. It almost feels, because it has that comedy element and whatnot. So
yeah, definitely. But I think this counts as a psychological thriller.
Definitely does, but it's nice to, these are maybe like two of the extremes of psychological thriller.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, well,
I guess that's that for episode 6. All we have left to do is pull our next topic.
Baby,
here we go. Do you want to do the honors this time?
Sure.
All right.
Wish me luck, everyone. Here we go. To be originals.
Oh God.
Just kidding. No. I didn't pull yet.
Please no.
Here we go. Set on a train.
Oh, set on a train.
That's cool.
Interesting. That is, I did not even remember us having that in there.
Yeah, that might be mine.
Set on a train. That is a strangely specific topic. The first movie that came to mind was Snowpiercer. That is the first thing I thought of. Because that's literally the entire movie set on a train.
Yeah. See, there's a lot, like there's the murder on the Orient, but the first thing that came to my mind was Train to Busan.
Oh, yeah.
Train to Busan is streaming for free.
Also, The General, Buster Keaton movie.
Yeah.
That's on a train.
Ooh.
Yeah, I guess Bullet Train.
Yeah.
I liked Bullet Train. That was good. Oh, yeah, Darjeeling Limited. That's another
set
on a train. Good movie. Taking of Pelham 123 is Subway.
With that would count, yeah. That's with.
Well, the original is Walter Matthau, but there's a remake with John Travolta. And
I didn't know there's an original. I just knew about the John Travolta one.
No, yeah, it's a 74, the original. Okay. I've only seen the original. I haven't seen the remake, but it's set in like the subway, which is a train. Also, Strangers on a Train obviously is on a train.
That's true. Also, there's Terror Train.
Oh yeah,
with Jamie Lee Curtis.
Also, The Train. Also, Runaway Train. Those are also movies set on a train. Well, now I realize that we actually have some good options.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when I was adding some stuff to our list, I was like thinking of more setting specific stuff.
Right.
And I was like, trains. There's a lot of train movies.
There's also a Japanese movie from the 70s called The Bullet Train.
Whoa.
It's interesting. Oh, it looks like Speed might have been like influenced by this. A Japanese bullet train is threatened with a bomb that will explode automatically if the train slows below 80 kilometers per hour. Unless a ransom is paid. Police race to find the bombers so the train crew can learn how to defuse the bomb. That looks pretty cool, actually. It has a cool poster. But, yeah. So, I mean, it seems like we have a lot of good options.
Yeah.
I don't really know which way I want to go with it.
I know. I'm kind of torn right now. I'm torn between, I think, like Train to Busan or The General.
The General's pretty awesome. I like The General. We haven't done a Buster Keaton. That would be definitely the oldest movie.
26?
Yeah. Train to Busan I saw a while ago, like around when it came out. I remember it being good.
Yeah, that's what I saw it also like around when it came out, and I haven't rewatched it at all. So it's one that I've been kind of meaning. I've been like thinking of watching more zombie movies recently, like
for Christmas.
yeah. I think I mentioned watching like 28 Days Later and 28.
Yeah.
And for some reason, like I've just been thinking of a lot of zombie movies that I'm like, I should watch this or rewatch this or whatever. And I haven't really jumped on that kick yet, but
yeah. And we were talking about there's a new 28 Days. I think it's 28 Years Later.
Yeah.
I think it's supposed to come out summer 2025. So we were thinking perhaps we could do the first two movies as little mini episodes at some point leading up to 28 Years Later.
Yeah.
So that could be something that we plan on doing in the summer. So, if anyone out there, stay tuned. Follow us on Letterboxd, follow us on Instagram, the YouTube, the Apple Podcasts, anywhere.
Yeah, and don't forget, also leave us some ratings. If there's all sorts of ways to interact with us out there. You can leave us ratings on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You can drop us comments on YouTube. You can shoot us an email at mindyourmoviespodcast@gmail.com. Leave us comments on our Letterboxd. However you guys want to get in touch with us, feel free.
Yeah.
We're excited to hear your guys' thoughts and stuff.
Yeah, totally. And if you give us like a review on Apple Podcasts or anything like that, we can read it on the show. Same for the emails. If anyone has any questions, we could also talk about that on the show.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I guess we're getting down to the end of the show. We got to pick our train movies.
Yeah. Are you between anything right now?
Honestly, I was kind of between The General and Snowpiercer.
Ooh.
Darjeeling Limited is also very good. I like Darjeeling Limited. But I feel like those, I don't know, those are very good train movies. Yeah. I was kind of like, if you were going to pick The General, then I was thinking I would pick Snowpiercer. But were you thinking if I'm going to pick The General, then you're going to pick Train to Busan?
Yeah.
Damn.
Interesting.
Now we're at a crossroads.
A funny term to use.
Yeah, it is. I did that intentionally because I'm hilarious.
That's right. Well, I could totally pick The General.
Are you down for that?
Yeah, I'm down to rewatch Snowpiercer. And
all right.
General.
All right, I think that might be what we do then.
Awesome.
I feel like that those are also, Snowpiercer and Train to Busan are both sort of similar genres.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe The General and Snowpiercer are more varied uses of a similar thing.
Like in this episode, we had kind of more varied takes on the psychological thriller. We kind of more varied takes on the train movie.
Yeah, true. And the Train to Busan, are they on the train the whole movie? I can't remember.
I don't
think it's pretty much the whole movie.
Probably, yeah.
But yeah, Snowpiercer is a very interesting use of a train.
Yeah.
It uses the cards very specifically. And I haven't seen it since back when it came out, so I'm definitely down to rewatch it.
Hell yeah. So this will be The General Piercer?
Snow General? The
Snow
General
Roll?
Piercer.
Snow Roll? Snow
The
Piercer Snow
Snowper General.
Piercerol? Snow Piercerol?
What about the Snowpiercer?
Nope.
Yeah, I think the
Snowerl? Snowerl? Nope.
the Gen Piercer.
The Gen Piercer.
The Gen Piercer. That's
All right,
pretty good. The Gen Piercer.
Yeah.
Gen Snowpiercer. The
Genero the Gen O, like snow, Genero.
The Geno Piercer.
The
Geno Piercer.
Geno Piercer.
Okay.
Because the N from Gen starts with the N from snow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Geno Piercer.
Okay, perfect. It works out perfect. The Geno Piercer.
The Geno Piercer. That could be a movie.
No, it couldn't.
That makes no sense.
What the fuck is this title? All right.
Well, that's it for the Perfect Blue episode. Nope. The
Perfect Burn.
Perfect Burn episode. Make sure to catch us next week for
Tokyo Godfathers.
Tokyo Godfathers, and the week after that for the Geno Piercer
And the week after that for Black Christmas.
Black Christmas.
We got a whole schedule lined up.
Yes. Yep.
Yep.
And then we can't tell you what's going to be after that because it'll be our next genre episode. But coming soon after that, we're going to have Nosferatu. Yeah. Hopefully, if you're keeping up with us, check out some of these movies as we're watching them.
Yeah.
Follow along. So you're
part of the idea. We do it at the end so then you guys can catch up and you have 2 weeks to watch the movies and watch along with us if you want.
Yeah. So make sure to try to watch Tokyo Godfathers for next week and the General and Snowpiercer for the week after that.
All right.
Catch you guys then.
Bye.